Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the September 20th, 2023 Litchfield School Board meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. So review and revision of the agenda. Are there any changes that we should know about?
I'd like to move the candidate discussion and vote to public from non-public.
Okay. Is that a motion?
If it needs to be, I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. It has been a motion and a second discussion on this. I think the situation is under 91A3, matters which if discussed in public would likely adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself unless such person requests an open meeting. We will be discussing there were 8. One did drop out yesterday, and there appears to be one missing from the group tonight. But at least the 6 that are here, if they're in agreement, but they're not members of the body yet, and we will be discussing them, their qualifications, and their fit for the position. So my only hesitation is any, I don't want to say negative comments, but less than positive comments that could be made that could be damaging. So that's my concern. That is why it is currently here. I don't know if the board has any other discussion or thoughts about why they disagree with that or believe that's incorrect.
Well, I mean, this is an elected position, right? Now being appointed for the fulfillment of a term. In any event, it would be public knowledge regardless. And I think any discussion amongst the board should happen in public, and our decision should also be in public for transparency to the community.
Then I would ask that we ask the candidates if they're willing to request an open meeting as per RSA 91-A.
I don't think RSA 91-A 3C applies here, right? Because what would we be adversely talking about from these candidates?
The reputation.
The reputation, but they're applying for the position, right? So I'm not sure what we're afraid of.
I'm not afraid of anything. My interest is solely in protecting the reputation of 6 to 7 members of our community who have not asked for an open meeting. So all I'm asking is if they would prefer an open meeting, that they're all in agreement, then we have it moved to public.
Glad to ask that question, sure, but I would say precedent amongst other boards and process is to have vote and discussion be in public, not in non-public.
I don't think there is precedent for 7 to 8 candidates for any other public board position being interviewed.
We are very lucky.
We are indeed.
So many people apply. Yes,
I do think it's a bit of a different conversation if you're debating between 2 people, or in the case of the last time that there was a school board position open, 3 people applied and only 1 person showed up. So the conversation was, does that 1 person get it? It's a different. I understand the precedent. I just don't know that there is any applicable precedent here. I want to do it in the way that the board is comfortable. I'm certainly not making, I have no issue saying what I need to say in public. I just, some of it could adversely impact the reputation of people who are here.
Mr. Plansky, your thoughts?
I think I'm with Andrew. I think it should be, all the discussion should be public, right? It's an important position, especially as we are heading to the next town meeting, and there's a lot to do, and we certainly need to have a full board and full transparency to the public.
So my thought process would be, what would impact we're going to have a 2-2, I think it sounds like, which would mean that it would stay the non-public, which is what's on the agenda.
Yep.
What I'd like to do is ask the candidates if they don't mind, if you would prefer it to be an open or closed, and I understand I'm putting you on the spot, and I apologize for that, but I'll just go around the room and ask the candidates, and then based off of that would determine, I think it'll make us feel more comfortable or less comfortable, depending on the vote. So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Peoples.
Madam Chair, I think it should be done in public for full transparency. I've been appointed in the past to other boards. It's never been in a non-public session.
Okay.
I don't believe with my knowledge of RSA 91A that this rises to it, because I'm neither personnel or this is not a negotiation. Basically, you're going to listen to us answer your questions, and then you're gonna vote. I mean, I don't know what discussion really is on that. It's,
So I understand your position. Thank you. Mr. Stone?
I'm in the same place as Ray.
Okay.
Public.
Public? Ms. Kessler?
I don't have a preference,
Okay.
but I'm comfortable with public.
Okay. Mr. Shoemaker?
I'd like for public.
Okay. And it's Ms. Tremblay in the back? Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of having the discussion for the school board candidates be an open discussion in public, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? 4-0-0. So that going forward will be a public conversation on the record and recorded. So here we go. Committee reports. Consent agenda. Anything want to be moved to the old business
I'd like to move budget committee to old business.
budget?
Thank you.
Any of the other ones? Okay, hearing none, we will move budget and add that to the old business conversation. Moving into summary of non-public actions from September 6th, 2023. Ms. Ames made a motion to nominate Liz McDonald as a CHS special education teacher. Ms. Harrison seconded the motion, and the motion passed 4-0-0. Ms. Ames made a motion to approve a tuition student from Derry. Ms. Harrison seconded the motion, and the motion passed 4-0-0. Sadly, I still don't see a student representative here with us tonight. I was hopeful enough to put their name tag out, but not yet.
Well, so a quick update. There are students who are coming this evening. They were in a something or other game, and they would be here as soon as they could. So
Okay.
they are going to arrive a little bit. So if we want to just skip over that item, they'll be joining
So
us.
maybe we'll move that further down the agenda, just to see if, and again, I don't want to put them on the spot if they weren't planning to speak tonight, but at the very least, if they want to issue any report, they can later. Presentations and recognitions. We have our bi-monthly report from GMS Principal, Mr. Mitchell. Come on up. You want to
Will you
project?
display, or do you want me to display?
Do you mind driving it?
No. Just give me a second to pull it up.
I'll get you on.
See. Perfect. Okay. So thank you very much. First off, I'll just go a few highlights from our report. First off, I've included an enrollment summary. Obviously not the official, but just kind of where we stand. And as you can see, we're the popular show in town because we just keep getting more and more kids. So we are up to 443 students at GMS. Opening days went well, and
Is this what you're showing on screen?
sorry.
This is different than what you're showing on screen, or is this what you're intending?
I'm gonna get to
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
All right.
So I figured you had the report. This is in your report. This is the
See the
hyperlink.
audience looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the hyperlink on the fourth point, and I'll get there in
Okay.
just 30 seconds.
All
Again, I wanted to recognize Margaret Parent, who was recognized for 50 years of service. We had a nice ceremony at the opening days, and she's still back, and she's eye-readying kids, each and every day. So we love having her each and every day that she continues to come back. We had our first open house last night. We have our second one tomorrow night for grades 2, 3, and 4. While I have the public soapbox, we actually had good turnout last night, and we're encouraging again parents who, if they've never done the official volunteer training, to get it done at this point. And volunteer training is for any time that you'll have basically access within our school with students. So that means chaperoning field trips, helping out with class parties, anything like that. And so every year we do this push, and we get a few at the beginning of the year, but inevitably when the spring rolls around and we get kind of into field trip season, we have a number of parents who then want to do the volunteer training, and it becomes just a little bit harder to manage then. So the more we can do now, the better. But we had a great turnout last night. We were reporting, 17, 18 out of 20 students in class had parents to show up. So we're looking for a big night again tomorrow night. And speaking of big turnout, Finding Nemo Jr. It will happen in February, and we had 110 students
That's amazing.
try out for Finding Nemo Jr. And knowing that, obviously, if 110 wanted to be cast, they would be cast and we'd find a role, but also knowing that some of them just wanted the experience. And so we're also going to pull our crew and stage help and everything like that. But Ms. Magoon and some help with the other district music staff got through 110 kids, and the cast list, it's either just got released or is being released tomorrow morning. I've seen it, but I can't remember if everyone else is supposed to seen it. So, but I know it's going to be.
Suspense.
I know. So that is happening. And then what I wanted to really present on today, and it's to present to the board as well as, again, use the public soapbox as kind of step one in the public relations behind this. Last spring, I came forward with the redesign of the report card, going with competencies and indicators. And so now that we've put it into Power School and we actually have a physical example, I wanted to use this opportunity to kind of display it publicly. And so what you have there is what the report card would look like. I was going to ask someone to scroll, and then I realized I'm into control. So how the report card will look for this year is every grade will have competencies, which have been adjusted and rewritten to align K-12, but also be more elementary friendly. And then underneath each competency will be a set of indicators. And our hope was, the feedback that we've always received from parents was, the report card currently wasn't meaningful except for the comments. So they just would skip by and look at the comments, because that's really, we wanted to be able to tell more specifically about what your child can and can't do. But at the same point, we didn't want to become a report card that was so laden in specifics that it ends up being 8 pages long, because you're just checking off boxes of every single individual skill. So there will still be comments, but we wanted to try to capture what goes into that competency score. Now, I said that, but now I'm going to contradict myself. Because when it comes to the report card, the competency score is based on grades. The indicator is actually based on grades, observations, classroom performances. And so that's why we distinguish between the competency score of a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or a indicator grade of M, S, L, or NA, meaning they just didn't do it that quarter. And I'm going to say this over and over and over and over and over again. Do not try to find math that connects the indicator to the competency. There is a case where, because competency is based on graded performance, that you can have a 4 or 3 or 2. But there is no combinations of M's, S's, and L's that equal a 1, 2, 3, or 4. Because if you think about it, you can have a graded assignment, say for instance in math, that will capture a lot of skills, and that is going to lead to a competency grade. But indicators is what they show you on a day-to-day basis. So you could have a competency with a 2, but with some of those indicators being mastered. And also, whereas the competency would be based mostly on an average of the performance over the quarter, indicators should be grown and progressive. And so by the time the quarter ends, they may have achieved mastered. But that doesn't mean that they were mastered the whole quarter, and that's where the comments come in. So I caution people to try to find any math where letters equals numbers. We tried to make it so that letters equal letters and numbers equal numbers, and never the two should meet. They are connected, but not, they're aligned but not connected, if that makes sense. So then, as you can scroll through, and I will just, this is more and more of the same in terms of setup. Every subject has 2, sometimes 3 competencies. Each competency then has anywhere from 3 to 5 indicators. You will notice as you scroll through that when you get to some sections, they are, I would say, a bit more generic. And I will tell you that this report card, while it is something, we went with the commitment that we would have something by day 1, so that students knew what they were being assessed against and teachers knew what they were reporting against from the first day they had students. But we knew that we weren't at the ideal place, so we knew that there was still work to be done. So the work that the grading and reporting committee at the GMS level is going to be doing this year is, first off, And I know the whole district's going to be looking at those work study practices, especially the wording. You know, it's just hard to look at that elementary and think, I don't really know if kids and parents know what really integrity means at the elementary school, so if we can soften that language up. We also then need to look at curriculum alignment. We just brought in a new reading series, where year 2 of a new math series. And then we're also going to be doing a lot of work of writing. So we believe this report card is kind of always going to be living as things change, but we do have some targeted work. Science and social studies as well, we really want to get down into the dirt with that we just kind of didn't accomplish last year. And that's going to be very grade level specific based on units. So we have to align those indicators. So that's going to be a focus this year. You will notice though, and I do want to point this out, that under writing and under social studies, you're going to see they kind of look, there's a couple of generic indicators in there, and then there's one very specific one. And that's because we wanted to be compliant with the new law that came out last year that says civics and handwriting need to be taught. So you will notice in writing, there is a handwriting indicator, and in social studies, there's two kind of, one's about skills and concepts, and then one really specific one about civics. And we said that is what they do at the grade levels. That's not going to change. So we're gonna at least name it from day one. Of course, we could tweak. And then also looking at this as year 1 of this report card, viewing it kind of as a beta year. We're also, if you remember, I brought together a team of parents as we were doing this work last spring. We're going to bring that same team of parents and a few more, hopefully, like at the end of quarter 1 and then throughout the year, just to make sure that we're meeting their expectations as well. We want to get that kind of user-based feedback of, are we hitting the mark? Are we giving you the information that you expect? And is this report card, going back to those 2 words, helpful and meaningful? So that is what I have, and I will open up to any questions that you may have for me.
Any questions from the board?
No, I mean, I know a lot of work went into kind of correcting this based upon the feedback that we've had from last year. So thank you to everyone who contributed and to get this to this point. So
Yeah.
appreciate it.
So, and we've had our first grading reporting last week, and we kind of have our first missions of kind of jigsawing it. So some grade level is going to work on this and bring it back to the group, as opposed to everyone work on one thing. If 3 different people working on 3 different things, hopefully we can speed it up a little faster.
It's evident a lot of time and energy went into this, and I do appreciate that the teachers, you know, were building these basically from scratch based
Right.
on what
Yeah.
the feedback that you had gotten from parents, and parents reviewed this as well.
Yeah, so what we had, going back to last year, we had a grading reporting committee, and then we actually ended up giving a lot of, like, staff meeting time where we just said, go meet in groups. They met at grade levels, and then they were also able to meet, not as much as anyone would ever like, but we were able to do a couple cross grade levels to make sure that we had that alignment. 2nd grade and 1st grade say this is what we're thinking, and then kind of, align it so that we had that vertical progression throughout it. And then, yeah, I was able to pull together a team, again, a little later than I want and not as often as I want, to kind of say, and they gave us great feedback of, especially when we get trapped in our own edulingo, and they could say, I don't know what that word means. You use it all the time. I don't know what that word means. And we could kind of spell it out a little bit better for you. And I know we're going to keep getting that feedback too. As they get this report card after first quarter in conferences, we're going to say, and they're going to say, I don't know what you mean. And we can reword it and readjust it.
Well, to your point, it's iterative, right? So
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much
All right.
for your time.
Thank you.
Great, and then another presentation we have tonight is the follow-up to our discussion regarding the school district data security and privacy governance manual. So I'd like to invite Chris Jamrog, our IT director, up to the mic, and he's here to answer any questions that the board may have regarding this manual.
Hello. So I started to go over this manual pretty thoroughly this year, as I've been in the district for about a year now, or a little over a year. So this is something that needs to be reviewed and looked over, and I started to work with my team on going through some of the things that we do in here and things that we're not doing in here, and just starting to get us back up to speed. So that's pretty much it. The manual is just the public facing. It was product of House Bill 1612 in 2018, I believe it was. It was a big to-do, big thing. Everybody has one, and they're all generally the same. So this kind of outlines publicly like what we should be doing, what we're going to be doing and what are our next steps forward. And I've been doing a lot of background work on it as well. So no formal presentation, just kind of discussion on
Opening
it.
up for questions then.
Yeah.
No specific questions. I haven't had time to re-review it. Have there been any updates to this document?
So the document itself, there's no updates, but I have things in the background that I've been updating and working on. So I know some of the questions were like the disaster recovery plan. I'm working with Primex for an updated one. That's a big one. I know our software list is something that our digital learning specialist has been working a lot of hours on, and I've been working with her a little bit. So that's more up to date. We're just kind of going through all the little pieces and getting us back in line with everything that might have taken a year off or two.
And as we update, right, this document will then be updated.
So this
accordingly.
document is generally not, the idea of this is that it doesn't get updated too much. It's kind of like a blank, broad statement of like, yep, we're going to do security. But how are we going to do security? Then that's a document that we don't bring to the public, unfortunately, because, well, we don't want to tell them what we're doing. So this is the public facing, like, these are the do's and don'ts that we should be doing, and we don't necessarily have to update it very often, but there will be updates here and there as we go through it, as I'm working through the pieces.
Okay, thank you.
So how do we show that we're adhering to what we say in this document in practice?
So in practice, we have procedures and stuff that we have that are more private, and we can have those discussions if we.
This will be coming forward to the board with a refresh of policies
Yeah.
at our October meeting, and this is connected to the policies that the board reviews and approves.
Right, so some of those policies relate to this and vice versa, and then some of the procedures we have that I'm working on updating, those are private ones that we can always have that conversation if we need to about them.
Okay.
So the board doesn't necessarily need to approve this manual. This is approved and drafted by Mr.
So it needs to be
Jamrog and
reviewed every year.
by the board.
Yeah.
It
Right,
does.
so this is
Okay.
that June 30th
Right.
date
Every year.
every year that's
But
in
are
this.
we, I guess my question is, are we doing that now, or are we gonna do that more in alignment with the policy discussion in October?
So,
This was the opportunity, I think, to answer questions.
yeah, it was actually brought forward last time for approval, and then
Right.
the board asked Mr. Jamrog to come tonight so that you
Yep.
could ask questions.
Right.
There are some questions that Mr. Cutter has in the document, which I think we could check off tonight to make sure that we satisfy those.
Yep.
And then we are looking for approval, but if the board would like to take another 2 weeks to do that, that's fine. It's not urgent that we do it this evening.
What is the position of the board?
I'm okay. I'll make a motion to approve the Data Security and Privacy Governance Manual.
I'll second.
I said that right, Data Security and Privacy
And
Governance.
Got it, yeah.
before we vote on it, I'd like to just check off the questions that are in there so that we know they were.
Yeah, so I mean,
resolved.
and so it was seconded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we understand that this document has a number of references that will also require
Have to be
updates.
updated, yes.
Right,
Yeah.
so,
And hyperlinks to other documents that
Correct.
will be updated.
But Chris is here to answer your questions. Do we want to go through your questions that you commented on the document?
we had an opportunity as a policy committee
Okay.
to talk to Mr.
Chatted
Jamrog
about it.
yesterday and chat a little bit about it, so I'm good.
Okay.
So all the questions are satisfied?
All the questions are satisfied.
Thank you.
Pending the updates to be
That's
made.
policies, Perfect.
Does any other board members have questions?
No.
Okay. Seeing none, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the Data Security and Privacy Governance Manual, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? 400. Thank you, Mr. Jamrog, for coming and seeing us tonight and answering questions. Appreciate it. Do we have student reps here?
Do.
Welcome.
Hi,
gentlemen.
guys. Why don't you, you can come sit up here and then grab that chair in the corner and we have your student rep. Welcome.
Do you want to go back to that?
So if I
Let him
may,
settle in a little.
both gentlemen came down to see me. I have been in budget meetings all day long, so I did not get a chance to meet with them. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves, because what I was told is 2 guys from student council were coming to the meeting tonight, and that's all I got. So introduce yourselves and maybe give a little bit of history of yourselves on student council, and we'll see if the
Yeah.
board has any questions for you.
So my name's Aiden Skopolidis. This is my second year on student council. I'm one of the co-presidents, and we're just here to talk about what we've been getting done at Campbell so far. So
Great.
Yeah, I'm Alex Kirby. This is my 4th year on student council. I'm also a co-president, and yeah, I was treasurer last year also.
Excellent.
Nice, welcome.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We're excited to have you.
I missed your name, sir.
Aiden.
Aiden. Skopolidis.
Yep.
So we have agendas. I don't know if you have access to it online or if you've seen it. It is a public document, but I have a written copy here. I'm happy to share with you guys just so you have one in front of you. Part of the, I don't think I wrote on it. If I did, ignore my scribbles. Part of the agenda every 2 weeks is that we do put the student representatives on there so that you guys can give us a report and tell us what some of the things are that are going on in the district, particularly at CHS, and to be able to offer you the opportunity to ask us any questions that you may have. So I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know if you have anything planned for tonight. Do you guys want to talk tonight or?
Yeah, we made a little presentation for like what we had
Excellent.
done, so.
Then we're gonna jump in. Go ahead.
Um,
Floor is yours.
So,
Do you want to show it?
yeah, yeah.
You can show it through this.
The cable is here.
Okay. You wanna bring it over?
Yeah.
Is there like a Wi-Fi password or is it just public
Oh,
Wi-Fi?
boy.
There's a
In
splash
theory,
page.
it's public.
If you connect to Litchfield NH, you'll get a splash page to connect to.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah. Do Chromebooks have an HDMI?
It's on the other side.
I don't think Chromebooks have an HDMI.
That's probably true.
HDMI.
On a Chromebook, yeah.
All right.
Can you email it to me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll email it to you right now.
Improvise.
We're gonna problem solve this.
Sorry about this.
No, it's not your fault at all. And again, I know you guys literally walked in and we threw you on the spot, so we didn't
sorry.
give you any time to get settled. We were just like, come on in.
Sorry for being late. We both had sports right
Nope.
after school.
No apologies necessary. Mr. McDonough told us that, and Dr. Jetty shared that as well.
Thank you, Doug. That was awesome.
So close.
Thank you. Are you getting my email? Is it coming up for you?
Oh, yeah. It should pop up.
And then also make sure you share.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. We're almost there. All right, we just sent the email. It'll be from Aiden Skopolitis.
And then we're sharing it with you right
You're sharing the presentation?
now. Yeah, just
I bet I get it that way faster. Let me try.
Sweet.
you want us to sit up there or should?
Oh, no, you guys can sit there. You're good.
Yeah.
So again, lost in translation was there was a presentation coming.
Excellent.
Good.
Well, you guys come
I got it,
prepared.
gentlemen, and it is on the screen. You just say beep, and I'll.
All right.
I'm aging myself when I say that.
Oh, yeah, so just what's happened at Campbell, today's date, just what's happened past time.
All right. So we started this off with our goals for Student Council this year. And the first goal that we have is the Honor Student Council of Excellence. This is an award that our Student Council has never received before. This award celebrates high school student councils who meet high standards and demonstrate evidence of student service, leadership, and voice of engagement. Then the next one, we're planning on hosting the Winter District Conference. This conference is where we will invite other student councils inside our district, such as Pinkerton, Londonderry, and Goffstown, to put on a workshop for them.
Yeah, just
yeah.
quickly, the Honor Student Council, who awards that?
I'm pretty sure it's like a national thing, but like multiple student councils get it. It's just we've never like really ran for it. I don't know why, but he wants to do it this year and like see if we can get it.
Yeah, but it's a big award. It's
Yeah,
not,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not,
It's a national
yeah,
award.
it's not.
It's
a
like you
major
do it
award.
yourself. Major award. Excellent.
All right, so what have we done so far? So the first thing that we did when we came into school was we had to welcome the class of 2027. So we helped them find their classes. We gave them schedules. We also brought them together in the gym, and we did a couple icebreakers with them. The other thing too, we have been preparing for homecoming week. It hasn't happened yet, but we've been having a lot of meetings, and we're kind of finalizing everything this week, and should be ready by then. And then these are just like a few pictures of some of the icebreakers that we were doing. So.
All right, so upcoming school activities put on by our student council. So homecoming week plus the dance, what he was just talking about. This is a week of spirit days that brings our school together. In order to bring in new ideas for homecoming, we have sent out like a Google form for more student feedback. And then another thing coming up is the Make a Difference campaign. This is a food drive that all 3 Litchfield schools participate in the week leading up to Thanksgiving. The Friday before is the day we pick up the food donations from all 3 Litchfield schools, and then we'll just deliver them to the Litchfield Food Pantry. And these are just pictures from the 2 things from last year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's Emma.
When is homecoming?
Next week, so it'll be the 30th. I think will be the dance, and then the game's the 29th.
Just wanted to get a plug in.
That's exciting. Yeah.
All right, and then so a few things happening in the school, like actually not just student council. We have a new flex block this year called CAG, or Cougar Academic Growth. So each day we have a 35-minute block where students can select a teacher and they get to just work on anything that they need. It offers a lot more flexibility for all the students and just being able to get what we need to get done on our academic time.
Great.
How's it working?
It's working pretty well right now because it's kind of just like they're giving us a lot of of our own individualities. Like we can pick where we want to go, and then we can talk to the teacher more directly. So it helps if you're behind on anything like that. So.
I like it. The next thing, our digital portfolios. This is actually something that we started in CAG, and so each student was tasked to work on their digital portfolio, and then in this digital portfolio, students could include projects from throughout their high school years. They could include their sophomore projects, senior projects, and it just gives them something after graduating Campbell to show employers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask, is that mandatory, the digital portfolio for all the students? Is that,
Yeah.
that's across the board? Okay.
I think it's more focused on freshmen and sophomores because they can build stuff
Build it
throughout
up,
the year.
okay.
So they have
Makes sense.
But another thing, so just their sports, just to show that we care a lot about our sports here at Campbell. These are just all of our records and that everybody's doing pretty well. It's been fun for a lot of people. So.
Wow, that's impressive.
And this is our last slide. We just kind of want to end it off by showing all the clubs. We have a very diverse group of clubs. So, yeah.
I mean, the Taylor Swift
Taylor
Club.
Swift.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
year. Yeah.
You guys have any questions?
Nope, we asked them as we went along. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask your permission? So I need some student activity photos for the website, and you just provided a bunch.
Yeah.
Would you mind if I use those on the website?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Anyone on the board have questions?
Very impressive for the first couple weeks of school.
Welcome. Glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
All right, so you guys are sitting here at the table with us. As we go through the agenda and you have questions on anything that's brought up, feel free to participate, ask questions, whatever you want to do. You are not voting members, but you are definitely here and we want to hear what you have to say. So, and our meetings run long and we are not offended if you need to scoot out at some point because I assume you have
Lots of
schoolwork to do if you're coming from sports and you probably haven't been home yet. So just wanted to make that clear. You don't offend us at all if you scoot out. All right, moving into the school board candidates. So we, as we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, are lucky enough to have had 8 people initially apply, which I think is the most I've ever seen to fill a board vacancy on any board. We had one that indicated that she would not be able to continue. Is Miss Paradise in the hallway?
Miss Stevens.
Okay, all right, I just want to double check and make sure everyone who's supposed to be here. So we have here tonight, we did put out for the public awareness, we did put out a Google form. The answers to those questions, except for your personal phone numbers and your addresses, were put together into a Google Sheet, which is linked and embedded in the agenda. that has allowed the board as well as the public to be able to have access to the candidates that have applied. In the beginning of that Google form, we did ask for them to come tonight to answer any questions by board members, and so we appreciate you coming here and doing that and taking time out of your evening to do that. And I'm gonna open the floor up to the 6 candidates that are here. I think first, if I can, Oscar, are you gonna be able to hear them back there, or should I have them move up to mics?
Mike's.
Okay. So why don't I have, I'm going to go in the order that we received for an initial introduction, and then why you're interested in the position, which I know you wrote on the form, but you can share that with us tonight, and then we'll go into more direct questions. So I'm going to start with Mr. Burke. If you want to, you're the first one to get it in. Have a seat and introduce yourself and let us know why you want to do it.
Okay. My name is Brian Burke, and I'm a former board member. I served 9 years on the school board. I left a year and a half ago to go into the budget committee. And the reason that I'm offering to apply for this position is I think I could be helpful to the board. I've been involved with, I know Christina, played a big part as far as kindergarten, but I was also there for part of it. As far as the new GMS, I was there at the beginning before when we met with the architect, so I have all the background with that. I've been involved with teacher contracts, which I know you're up against right now. Budgets. I've been with the budget for like the last 10 years, so I think I can be very helpful stepping in right now to help the board.
Great. Do we want to ask questions now, or do you want to just go through intros first? Any preference from the board?
My view is questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, so the pressing question, right, has to be, what are your intentions for budget committee?
I would have to resign.
If you come onto the school board.
I would resign.
So I have 2 questions that I'm going to ask everybody. So my first one is, what will be your number 1 priority as a board member for the next 6 months?
I guess my number 1 priority is to offer my experience to help the board get through the next 5 months. I mean, you have a lot in front of you right now.
Yeah, we know.
And I think having some experience would make a smooth transition for you.
And my second question is, who do you represent?
Who do I represent?
Like, who would you be representing as a member of this board?
What
Like,
voice?
What voice? Yeah.
What voice?
Mm-hmm.
I think no different than it was when I was on the board. I mean, I'm looking to offer the best education to our students, to support the teachers, to maintain and hire the best teachers. It's the education. That's number 1.
Thank you.
Mr. Plansky, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I guess, Brian, how do you think we as a board can communicate better with the townspeople?
You're out there. I mean, I hear it a lot, like the meetings aren't, different things aren't transparent. These meetings are public. They're always broadcast. Information is given out on Facebook. You're accessible. Your emails are there. They can call you anytime. So, I mean, we've tried as a board, we tried to be as open as possible and share as much information as possible with the public. And I think the board has done that for years.
And any other ones? Sorry.
Come back to me. I think I have another one.
Okay.
I lost it.
My question, in terms of the elementary school project, how would you rank that as a priority of yours? Would you rank it high, medium, or a low priority?
I'd rank it as high.
Thank you.
I was on the facility committee when we ranked it number 1 for the town.
Thank you. That answers my question. Any other questions on the board?
Just about the district performance. I think at the last meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about performance statewide, nationwide. What are your thoughts on being able to improve that?
Well, I think the principal has a lot in front of him, but at the same time, there's so many different reports you can look at that, and so much information. And it's, like Mr. Carter brought up, we're high here, low here, and it doesn't match. So I personally don't know, I know there's work to be done, And I think direction needs to be given by the board as far as what you're looking for from the principal.
What do you think is the biggest challenge in the district right now?
Biggest challenge. Probably the elementary school. I think there's a great need for it. I know that it's sticker shock to a lot of people as far as the expense, but I think down the road and for long term, it's needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate it. You're welcome to stay. Welcome to leave, whatever works for you. Again, I'm going to ask Miss Paradise, are you here? Because you were next on the list. All right, then Mr. Shoemaker, you are up front here. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Do we need to do our address again, or is that
No,
sufficiently recorded on public record?
You're good.
All right, I'm Matt Shoemaker. I've lived in town for, I guess, about 14 years now. I am a local attorney, and I've been pretty involved with the school, mostly the elementary school project. I got kind of involved when you started holding the forums, got really interested, and just kind of got sucked down that rabbit hole for the last however long it's been now. And I've just taken a genuine interest in the school board and the happenings within the district since I started doing that. I formerly sat on the planning board years ago. I guess it's been a while now, but I've been in town for a while. And yeah, I'm just interested because what I've found in participating in the public forums and participating in the process, I've been lucky enough to be able to participate in a lot of the process with the elementary school stuff, is that there's just a major disconnect between, I think, there's different factions, it seems like, in such a small town, which seems so silly because we're such a small town. And I think a lot of it is based off of information. It's just, there's questions that are either not answered or not answered sufficiently, and even if they feel like they're answered, then some people are not interpreting or understanding the information, and it's just creating a lot of, I think, chaos we're seeing with the way things get either shot down or challenged or whatever. So I took an interest in that, and I figured that this was an opportunity to try to help make a bigger difference in that.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up for questions.
That's my two, if that's okay.
Please do.
So, what's your number one priority for the next 6 months or 5 months?
So, I mean, obviously, I was very focused on the elementary school, but I think that the biggest priority right now is trying to help, which you've all been doing, but trying to help unify people and help, because I'm lucky enough to have a lot of communication with different people. And there's one community member that she and I have very different views on a lot of things, but I really enjoy the conversations because a lot of times she brings stuff to my attention, and what we always end up doing together is saying, okay, well, that's our belief, but let's go find the evidence to support that belief, right? Like, let's go figure that out. And if that's a problem, we need to address that problem, right? And so while we may not always agree on everything, it's really a great exercise for me, especially seeing another viewpoint, because I think ultimately at the end of the day, with what needs to happen with the board and with the district, is everyone's ideas need to be accounted for, right? Whether they agree, whether it's my belief or not my belief, I still need to take that into account, right? Because we're a community that has to come together on those things. So I think finding a way to bridge that gap, and by doing so, by getting information and providing it with evidence, I think that's like probably would be my number one priority.
And the other one was, who do you represent?
So I think you can't, in a position like this, you can't represent just one person, right? Like, obviously, we're here to represent the kids of Litchfield. That's the number one thing that we're ultimately looking to do. But in doing that, you have to also represent the teachers and the administration and the citizens. And some of those citizens don't have any connection to the school, right? Like, they don't have kids in the school. This is literally just a line item on their tax bill. And it's important to understand their concerns too, because at the end of the day, they're paying taxes that are going into the schools, and their, beliefs and needs need to be accounted for as well.
Questions?
So similar question, Matt, how does the board become more transparent to the community?
Well,
I'm one of those guys who said, stuff happens kind of behind the curtain, and until you're involved, you really don't know how the sausage is made.
Right. And sometimes the way the sausage is made has to be held in closed session, right? So we don't always, as the public, get to know those things. I think I agree with the point that was made before, which is I do think the board tries to make a really big attempt at getting information out there. And I do believe that there is a partial problem of there are people that don't necessarily want to go seek out the information, but do have opinions on the information. That's unfortunate. I have tried to, when I see someone saying something, now obviously I think this changes when you're a board member, right? I don't think it's really appropriate for board members to be necessarily in a Facebook group, because you have a board position. But to this point, I try to go in there and say, okay, well, like these are the concerns. You can at least look at them and say, these are the concerns, right? These are the concerns that people are echoing online. And I think addressing those concerns in public, right? They may not listen to them, they may not look at them, and you can't solve that problem, but at least actively going to address those concerns and doing so by saying, okay, you brought up this concern, like let's find either the evidence that you're citing or let's find evidence against that. And at least present it so that way there's data to back things up. Because I think most people, even if they have an opposing viewpoint, are going to, if the data is pretty clear and it's legitimate, it's hard to refute it. So the answer to your question is there may not be an easy way to do that, but you can make your best effort, I guess.
Additional
You
questions?
talked about your biggest priority or the biggest priorities that you see. What about the challenges that the board is facing? What is the biggest challenge that we have today?
I think the biggest challenge that you have right now is that there's a large population that doesn't trust the board. There's a large population that doesn't trust the administration. There's been a historic, rub between the board and the administration with, trying to get information or not feeling that they're getting information. Peter brings that up, but I don't know if that's, improving now that you are on the board and you're feeling like you're getting, I think it's about asking pointed questions and knowing what you're asking for. I haven't run into that personally, but I do think that that's probably the biggest challenge that you guys face right now, because ultimately, I'm passionate about the school because I go into that school and it's an abomination. It's terrible to go in there. It's really unfortunate that as a town we're deciding that that's what's best for our kids, whether or not we have kids in that school. I do, full transparency, but and in full transparency, I almost didn't send my child to that school. I almost paid for private school because I was appalled to even walk her in there. If it weren't for the staff there, I would not be there. That's obviously a big problem, but at the end of the day, that's going to go before the voters. And we still have this big issue of a lot of the voters not feeling confident. And if we don't address that, it doesn't matter how many times we put that in front of them. It's going to be an uphill battle.
Thank you.
Any questions? Mine was the same as before, which is how would you rank the elementary school project as a high priority, a medium priority, or a low priority? I know your answer, but I want to give you the opportunity to say it. Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other questions from the board, you can have a seat. Thank you so much. Mr. Peoples, you are up. If you'd like to introduce yourself to the board, give us a little bit of background about you, and then the board will ask some questions.
Thank you. Ray Peoples. I'm a resident of Litchfield for the past 34 years. I've served on many town boards and committees over the year. I started on the Conservation Commission. I was tapped for an appointment to the Budget Committee, where I served out a term way back in the beginning. I was selectman for 5 years, a couple terms on the Budget Committee, the Executive Committee at NRPC, the Merrimack Valley Water District, Scouts, and a few other things I've probably forgotten. But the only thing that I bring to the board is a lot of experience in town here over the years. I've never served on the school board. My intentions were probably never to serve on the school board. I regret that Liz has stepped down. I applaud her for her new job working at CHS. I know she's happy. But I still fully intend to run for state rep in 2024. I think that the knowledge that I could gain from the school board would help me as I move forward with that role, because there are things that appear to happen in the black magic box that nobody understands. Being on the board, I only could offer my experience in all those different areas and my openness and willingness to have my mind changed, presented with a good set of facts. As far as CHS GMS goes, I volunteered down there for a couple of years. I wired a lot of that building for the technology that exists there. Some of the junk is still around. A couple of years after I hadn't volunteered, I went in there and my desk was still there with my stuff on it. We had a good time doing it, and it was a great building to work in. I don't necessarily know that the bricks and mortars need to be thrown away. I do believe that solving the elementary school one way or another is a top priority, and there needs to be a solution. Whether that's a new school or renovation, that I'm not convinced. I don't see all the facts that you guys see. We only see what we see on the outside here, so I would leave that decision up until the time it needs to be done.
Questions from the board?
So you've lived in town for a long time.
Yep.
How do we communicate better with, especially the folks that have been here for I'm 25 years and still considered new. So
Yep.
I think 30 years is the minimum.
Me too. I live in the cheap seat, so I live down on 3A, right in the farm, in the reason why everybody moves to Litchfield, the agro community, and they don't just distrust you, they just distrust the budget committee, they distrust the board of selectmen. It's pretty much across all the boards, because people don't pay enough attention, I believe, to get all the facts. They only get little bits and pieces, and they make large decisions on that formulation. I can't tell you, you guys are pretty out there, your agendas are pretty clear, so I'm not sure what you can do in the outreach. Just be honest with the people, I think, is the biggest thing you can do. Just be honest.
So what would be your number one priority?
Number one priority would be to come up to speed and understand all the problems presented to the board. And the board's agenda would be the number one priority, whatever the board sets as that.
And who are you a voice for?
I'm a voice for the residents of Litchfield. Always have been, always will be. I represented us on the Merrimack Valley Water District when I wrote the charter for that to try to protect us in the Nashua takeover of Pennachuck. I was always a voice of reason there. NRPC, it was the same way. So, I mean, I'm pretty well documented in who I represent.
My same question is the biggest challenge the board's facing. What do you think that is?
Money. The biggest problem right now is large drop in the bucket for a potential purchase of land, potential purchase of an elementary school. I think those are big hits for the town. Not to be overlooked, considering all the other things that are happening in the budget, with the balloon payment for the fire station and things like that all coming at the same times. I think your financial representation is going to be your biggest problem.
I think you answered my question, but I'm going to ask it again anyway. Is a new elementary school for you a high priority, a medium priority, or a low priority?
A solution to the elementary school problem is a high priority.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before you scoot? Sorry, I just want to make sure.
All good.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Ms. Kessler. Welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background, and then we can ask some questions.
I'm Virginia Kessler. I have only been in Litchfield 2 years, so I want to just address that sort of head on. My background's in higher education. I have taught at a variety of colleges and universities, but primarily state systems, so I come to you knowing a little bit about what happens behind the counter. Litchfield's sort of hard to be new, right? So when we came here from Colorado, I was looking for a volunteer opportunity. My husband's career is kind of all-consuming, so I'm not working outside the home. And I wanted to meet people and be helpful if I could. And I heard from other parents that there was a really desperate need for subs. So I said, sure, I can do that. And I've been subbing in all 3 of our schools for a year now. I approach it sort of as a volunteer position. All the money I make, I send back into the school. I buy crayons and pencils and Amazon wish list. That was my little secret till just now. But I mention it because I want you to know the depth of my commitment to our schools, and I want you to know how much free time I'm willing to give, right? I see myself as a full-time volunteer. I've gotten to know our teachers and our students, and I have to say subbing is a great way to get to know your neighbors. I went to knowing no one to, right, I can't go to Licks anymore without, right? So that's been terrific. And I've been listening to our teachers, and you were talking about the various factions in town. Truthfully, I know nothing of it, right? I haven't been here long enough to have gotten involved in what I'm guessing is some heated behind-the-scenes politics going on. I'm not a part of that. We've got good schools. We've got good schools. We could have great schools. We're this close. I'm telling you. I know sometimes when you have what feels like a big problem, it can feel like the solutions are going to be equally hard and equally big. But no, sometimes if you have a headache, some water, a couple of ibuprofens, you don't need brain surgery. That's where we are. We are solidly middle class. We have strong families. We don't have overcrowding. We don't have poverty in large numbers in our communities. We could be excellent, and I think we could get there quickly. These kids, right? You know, I go on Facebook and I read about our schools, and it doesn't match the schools I go into every week. The kids are terrific. Our teachers are tired. Our schools are understaffed. But I see little miracles happening every day, and they deserve our support, and they have mine.
Thank you.
Questions?
I'll go back to my same 2. What will be your top priority as a board member?
Of course, GMS, there are issues with that facility. Of course. Our last school district was new and affluent, and the schools were beautiful with views of the Rocky Mountains. And my children were behind and unhappy. My current 5th grader, last year, his scores went up 495% at GMS, right? We do have facility problems. But our teachers, let me be clear, could educate our kids in a one-room schoolhouse if they had to. We have excellent teachers. So yes, our school, it's a high priority, but so is staffing.
And whose voice do you represent?
You know, of course, the kids, our teachers, our leadership, our parents. Mostly our kids.
Biggest challenge in the district?
Staffing. You know, our leadership is enthusiastic. They have great ideas, but they're running around every day trying to put out little fires. You know, they're stepping in the lunchroom and at recess, and they can't do the faculty development and the growth because of staffing issues. You've got teachers coming in wondering if they're going to have enough help for their individual classrooms. It's a big problem. I'm available to all 3 schools, and the sub-coordinators at all 3 schools literally text me all day long, right? Trying to get people in the door. It's hard.
Thank you.
So you're fairly new. I mean, there is, as Ray alluded to, there's sort of a trust issue with not just this board, but with all the boards. What are your thoughts on how do we change that perception in the public eye?
Sure. I mentioned earlier this sort of disconnect between, I think, how the public tends to perceive our schools and what I really see happening once I get in the door. I think we need more parental involvement. I think during COVID, we sort of shut those doors and there wasn't much going in and out of the schools. And I think that's kind of hurt us. And I'm told that we used to have programs like chess clubs and those kinds of things going on. They stopped with COVID and they haven't kicked back up again. But we need those programs, right? And I do think if we had more involvement, I think we'd have a more accurate picture of what's happening inside our schools.
Thank you.
I think you answered my question in terms of the priority level of the elementary school, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to elaborate on that if you wanted to.
It is absolutely a high priority.
Okay.
I don't want to take away from that. I also, while I say that, I want to make it clear that I think Mr. Mitchell's team and our teachers do an amazing job every day of working with what they have. Mm-hmm. Children will bloom where they are planted, right? So it's a high priority.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
No, thank you.
Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming out,
Thank
and
you.
thank you for coming in and expressing interest in it. Ms. Tremblay. Welcome. And if you could introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background about you, and then we'll hop into some questions.
Sure. Christine Tremblay. I live at 15 Nomke Court, Litchfield. I've been here about 30 years. I would say both my boys are grown adults now, and they both went to the public school system, all 12 years of their public school life. And I did volunteer, but I will be the first to admit I'm probably the least experienced of all these candidates that are here today as far as this position goes, because, I volunteered and so forth, but I was never on a board necessarily. I helped out where I could in the elementary, middle, and high schools. But being a full-time working mom, I wasn't able to do as much. So now that I have a little more time and my children are grown, I'm also not as much in the mix anymore. I have to say I don't know as much is going on. So I feel like when I saw the request for it, it was like, well, I don't know how many people would go for it. So, but that was a good time to try, and it was a short-term thing to see if it was something I could do and be good at. As far as my work experience goes, I work in more of an analytics side, data analytics, but also problem solving. So I'm more on the right side of the brain, I guess. And so some of the things are difficult for me to understand, and I want to understand them more. I want to bridge those communication gaps and try to understand what's going on and be more involved in the community again, now that my kids are grown. And there are many challenges, and I think all of I will say it is not, it's not unique to this town. I have many friends and family that are in the education system across towns and states across the country, and I would say they're all facing similar challenges. I think you guys all have a lot going on in the world, whether it's post-COVID issues, economy issues, social issues. There's a lot to face. So I just felt like, well, if I can help at all, and especially if there was no one going for the position, I'm willing to step up. So that was pretty much the reason.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Question?
So what would be your number one priority?
Like I just said, there's so many things to tackle. I'm not sure. I think to be, in all honesty, since it's a short-term position, it would be getting up to par on how the process works, what is necessary from a board member, what I can do and what I'd be good at, and step in where I can to really help where needed most. That would probably be the first priority, right? But that being said, I agree the elementary school is probably one of the biggest priorities. I remember voting on that 20-something years ago when my kids weren't even in elementary school yet. So I'm all for it, but I think it's going to, like everyone else said, it's going to be a big challenge with all the other expenses in the previous years in the economy, to be quite honest with you.
Oh, and
Sorry,
I know
I figured we'd
you
get
have a second.
I'm waiting for your follow-up.
What choice?
I had to have two questions. And who do you represent? Who would you be feel you represent?
I would like to represent the students again because I am a little more far removed. So I'm glad you have student representatives coming because I think everyone needs to hear, especially those like me that our kids are out of the system, hear what's going on these days, not on Facebook and not on the news, but from the actual people themselves, and find out what you guys want and need. Because I think as adults we tend to forget to be involved in that piece of it sometimes when our kids aren't in the system anymore.
Mr. Cutter?
Biggest challenge in the district, what do you think?
Everyone's touched upon it, I guess, and I have too, but I think it's going to be the financial. I kind of agree with Raymond in that we have a large percentage of people outside, the kids aren't in the system anymore, and perhaps even, I don't want to call them elderly because I'm one of them now, over 55, but, that, and especially the ones even older that are not even on some of this technology. How do you reach them? I think that if we really want to get in order to get things done, we need the money. And we need them to vote this stuff. And I mean, we've had some fairly good luck in the last few years. Actually, I was actually shocked that we got some of the middle school thing passed, to be honest. So, but now with the additional challenges with inflation and stuff, I think it's going to be a rough year. So trying to get, I don't know what the answer is, but again, trying to think of problem solvers, trying to get some of these folks that might say no, more, whether it's, I know they're not going to necessarily want to tour the elementary school, but somehow get them into some kind of breakfasts, something that we can show them what it looks like right now in the schools that they wouldn't want their grandchildren going into.
Same thing, how do we improve our reputation in town to get people to trust us so we can move the district forward?
Good question. I'm not sure. I do agree, just like everyone else said, that you guys do your best to put it out on social media, out on the school the school board website, have the open discussions and forums. So I don't think it's necessarily anything you're doing wrong. But again, maybe trying to think of other ways to get people that aren't on some of those, that don't attend or aren't on some of those forums, communication with them on what's going on and trying to clarify. Like another one of the reasons I was interested is because you have to hear all opinions and all viewpoints, and people don't, and it's hard to be in your own little silo without hearing others. So I think that's going to be tough, but if we can think about other ways to, whether it's sending out more flyers, I'm not sure what it is, someone getting to some of these retirement communities, distributing more information, whatever it is to try to get that trust back. I'm not sure, but it is a challenge.
Thank you.
Like I said, you're not alone. I don't think this is the only town that's facing that, so.
And again, my question was more related to the new elementary school or fixing the old elementary school. What type of priority level would you give that? A high priority, a medium?
Definitely high. Definitely. I don't know, and I kind of agree. I've heard other proposals from people, and I don't know, the problem is I don't have the inside scoop, right? So at first I had heard an idea, a suggestion of, well, geez, maybe we can expand Campbell, move the middle schoolers there, put the elementary school in LMS, and then I heard, well, yeah, but that was actually going to be more expensive than a new building. So, but I do agree we can't. I would love to say it's going to pass, and maybe it will, like some of the other things in the past. But it is high, very high. It was high 25 years ago when they were trying to vote it in. So yes, it's very high.
Great. No other questions? Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And Mr. Stone, last but certainly not least, come on up.
That's what happens when you wait to the last minute to
It's okay. You're
something
good.
you knew about at the beginning.
A little bit of background, your name, background, and
Sure.
then
My
questions.
name's Pete Stone. I am software engineer by trade. I run a bunch of teams at the federal government, building custom software for FEMA to cover flood insurance. I am also a member of our capital improvement committee. I've been on that for over 3 years now. Obviously, I've known most people here. But, you know, with my background, overseeing teams, doing pretty much everything, budgeting, performance management, people management and growth. I think I have a lot to offer to this board, especially with some of the challenges we're facing, with teacher attrition, schools, obviously, I think we've all kind of hit this. Yes, we need to do something about GMS, whatever that is. I don't have the answer to that. But certainly, we don't want to leave our kids in a bad spot. But coupled at the same time, and I think we brought it up, we have a lot of great teachers in town, trying to retain them and keep them so we're not losing them, right? That's hard to do. Ensuring that stuff happens. Pretty much it at this point. Everybody else pretty much covered everything else, so.
Okay.
Questions?
So what would be your number one priority?
I think my number one priority would be really looking at making sure the students are getting what they need, right? And that's a combination of the GMS for the elementary school. And I think really looking at the teachers and the programs. I mean, we've brought this up. We have a lot of great teachers here. You come from Colorado having that experience. I've had a similar thing with my children. But we don't want to lose that, right? And with a lot of these people leaving the district, I feel like we have lost some of it. I think we've lost some programs, COVID, money problems, whatever those are. I think it puts us, a little bit behind other schools in the area because they offer some of the programs we don't. So.
Okay. And who do you represent? Whose class are you?
I think I represent the students, and then probably next the teachers, and obviously the taxpayers have to come into play there because, school takes a lot of money. It's a lot of tax money to drive the school, improvements, buildings, the future state. So.
Thanks. Mr. Cotter?
What do you think the biggest challenge is facing the district right now?
I think it's a combination of the school, I think some of the perceptions that are out there, and I think it's teacher retention, right? And being able to offer them improvements and growth opportunities to retain them in the district.
And CIP committee, what would you do about that?
If I end up on this, I'll have to step down. It's a conflict of interest for me to do both.
Thank you.
Mr. Plansky?
Kind of same thing. How do we, as a board, regain the trust of the community?
Well, if we all only had the answer to that one. I think the easy answer is transparency. I think there's some opportunity. We have a lot of different people in this town that do a lot of different things. I think maybe some outreach to say, hey, how do we get help on talking to people about construction, talking to people about IT, talking to people about needs across the school districts, right? If we have programs or specific needs, we have a whole town full of folks that we can talk to. I think, the other thing that come up is generational disconnects, right? Not everybody's running around with cell phones and looking at Facebook and social media platforms, especially the people that are not from the generation that was a common thing. I think it's a difficult question. What do? You put flyers in everybody's mailbox? Do you put Skyriders up in the sky. I mean, I think it's really dependent on the group of people you're targeting to get information to. Me living in IT world, email, social media, it's normal stuff. Maybe we do letters, flyers, I think somebody brought up. I think we're gonna have to cover multiple gamuts to get the biggest group of people we can. But I mean, I think advocacy, and I think the other thing that we had brought up earlier was people not understanding all the facts and figures. And, I know the land purchase in March, talk to 10 people, you're gonna get 10 different answers as to what the target of that was, if the school doesn't go forward, what happens to that land. I'm sure you've all heard it, right? I mean, and does it match the warrant? No, in a lot of cases it becomes hearsay, right? And the grapevine. And I think that's probably one of the bigger problems, right? How do you break down people's twisting of things as it moves person to person, right?
My question is regarding the elementary school. With respect to building a new school, do you rank that as a high priority, medium priority, or a low priority?
I think the solution to that problem, one way or another, is a high.
Okay. Not necessarily set on a new school.
No, not directly, no. I think we need to look at the options, right? I think, it was also brought up, we're still trying to pay off the fire department. I think my unfortunate understanding what's on the CIP plan, police department's looking for money. They're having struggles with their needs, right? And I think it really just depends on how we figure this out and how we project those needs out to the people who are going to vote on it, right?
Any other questions from the board?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
So we have now heard from the 6 candidates who came here. Going back to our agenda, we had initially talked about discussing this in non-public, which would have been at the end of the agenda. I would like to propose hearing community comment. There are people in the audience that may want to comment on what we have heard before we go into the discussion about the candidates. Is that something that everyone is in agreement with?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and call for community comment. If anyone would like to, public comments shall be made and limited to 3 minutes per person. Public comments shall be made without the expectation of a response to matters raised by such commentary and shall be addressed regarding topics on the agenda. So, welcome, and you can introduce yourself. Both of you.
I like that shirt.
He had a rainbow birthday party for his 3-year-old birthday, and it still fits. Oh, he still wears it. Cool. So I am Kate, and this is Philip Stevens. We are here to represent my husband Andrew and the rest of our family at 9 Evergreen Circle. And we're just here to share our support for Matt Shoemaker for the open school board position. We've known Matt for many years, and we've always been impressed with his drive and ability to reach his goals, especially those that have taken multiple years to accomplish. Most of you have worked with Matt before and know that one of his best qualities is his ability to advocate for the schools and the students without making things personal. He knows his facts, and he can present them clearly. If there's something that he doesn't know, he isn't afraid to admit that he doesn't have all the information, and he will listen to what you have to say and tell you he will research it further and then follow through with that. Matt is one of the most driven people we know. He's the type of friend that answers when you need a helping hand, and he has answered the call when the school board needed volunteers to work towards remedying the issues we face with GMS. Many of the public will recognize him from previous board meetings, deliberatives, community forums. He expects the best from people, and we are confident that he would bring his best to our school board. So he's been very supportive of us and our family, and we're here just to support him. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's
Bye,
it,
Flip.
Go ahead.
Any other community comments for tonight? Seeing none, we will close community comment at this time, and we thank those of you that provided the board with comments. There will be a second community comment either at 8 o'clock or at the end of the agenda. I'm guessing it's probably gonna be the 8 o'clock time period based on how we're going here. So now we can move back and slide into the conversation regarding school board candidates.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve Mr. Peoples for the position of the school board candidate.
There is a motion. Is there a
A
second?
second?
Okay, discussion?
I mean, we talk about experience, we talk about having the knowledge to step right in and help over the next 5-6 months. Mr. Peoples has tremendous experience over his many years of service to our town, and I think he'd be a great asset to the board.
Just sort of buttress that, I think, given that race time in town, across all those boards, can be helpful in sort of our messaging to the whole town and not just those folks who have kids in school.
I'm going to disagree. Mr. Peoples, while I appreciate his years of service to the town and all the committees that he served on, didn't mention students or education in his form responses. And for me, the students are at the forefront of everything that we do, and I would not support Mr. Peoples in this position.
First of all, I guess I just want to say thank you to all the candidates, but to Mr. Peoples, thank you for applying. But I would also agree that in terms of experience, Mr. Peoples has not been on a school board before. And so if we're looking to be able to jump in and have someone hit the ground running with LEA negotiations and with facilities, someone who's been attending those meetings, Mr. Burke and Mr. Shoemaker are the two candidates to me that have the most experience and would be able to, without too much of a gap or delay, be able to meaningfully participate in our discussions. So while I again respectfully thank you for putting your name out there, I would not be able to support Mr. Peoples at this time, but we will have a vote on that. So unless there are any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
Seeing none, all those in favor of approving Mr. Peoples for the vacant school board position, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? So it is 2-2 tie, which is a fail for now.
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Stone for the open position for school board candidate.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion?
It's really the same. Mr. Stone's been instrumental on the CIP. He's been well versed in the budgets for the schools over the past several years. And I think that having that experience will play a good part in what we're trying to achieve as a district.
And I will respectfully, again, thank you, Mr. Stone, for applying. But being where we are at this point in time, I feel like we need somebody who has been involved in paying attention to all of the issues that we're faced with right now. I agree with you 100% on our need to attract and retain good teachers. But I feel like having been on the facilities committee and having done the research on the GMS project and eliminating through a very open and public process, eliminating all of the options, I think that we're past the point of needing to look at options. So I disagree with you there. So I would not support Mr. Stone as a temporary appointment. But welcome all of you to apply in March.
Apply in January, run in March.
Right, run in March.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with my similar comment. Again, while I respect you applying for the position, truly, I would indicate that I think there are other candidates that fit the need that we have more, that have been in town longer, that certainly have been involved in the major issues that we're facing right now as a school board. And so I will respectfully decline and be voting nay. Seeing questions or comments, all those in favor of Mr. Stone, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Abstain? Okay, so that is again a 2-2, which is a failed vote at this point. I would like to make a motion to approve Mr. Burke as to fill the vacant school board position.
I'll second.
as I indicated previously, I guess I'll just jump into it. Mr. Burke served on the school board for 9 years. He left voluntarily. He was not voted out of the position. He chose not to run again in order to address a need that he saw in the budget committee. The public clearly has supported him through 3 different elections for that position. He was chair of this board for many years, and he has the knowledge for LEA negotiations. He has the knowledge for facilities. He still serves on facilities as a representative from the budget committee. And so I would wholeheartedly support him in this position and think he could do a great job for the next 5 months.
I agree with
Is that a
everything
ditto?
you said. Yeah, same.
Look, I think you're instrumental in the budget committee, right? The people have voted you on the budget committee, and I think you serve a critical need on that committee, right? Therefore, I'd like you to stay on that committee because you are an instrumental voice for what that committee talks about and how they action themselves. And I thank you for that.
I don't want to say ditto, but I would agree. Your experience here on the school certainly helps you with the budget, and can help put forward what we need to have happen. So I think I'm with Andrew. I would rather see him stay on the budget committee.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of Mr. Burke to fill the position, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
And abstain? We're liking this 2-2 vote, aren't we?
I'd like to nominate Matt Shoemaker to fill the position on the school board.
I'll second.
I think Mr. Shoemaker has been to several of our meetings over the past few years. He's been clearly paying attention to all of the upcoming issues that we have, and while he may not have experience serving on the board, I think he's shown that he's eager to learn and capable of learning and dedicated to help increase transparency and unify our community as much as he can.
Ditto.
It's a theme, right?
The enthusiasm and ideas coming from Mr. Shoemaker are remarkably similar to the reasons why I ran for this position, to build bridges, to try to help bridge the gap between, there's no other word for it, different factions in town, different beliefs in town. Haven't been able to do it quite yet, and I'm hoping somebody else coming on the board with his energy and his passion, that we can do it, all 5 of us. So I, again, wholeheartedly support Mr. Shoemaker. Mr. Cutter, Mr. Polanski?
No doubt, Mr. Shoemaker has been a voice of reason for the new elementary school. Definitely enjoyed the responses this evening, and what I really liked is the unity that you mentioned and that common approach. Info sharing is poor, and connecting the dots has always been a challenge. I think we'll all agree to that. And so we obviously welcome any change to that. Perception of the board also needs to change in getting the message out. I think you'd be a great asset to the board.
Any comments?
No comments.
Okay, great. There is a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving Mr. Shoemaker to fill the vacant position, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Passes 4-0-0. Congratulations, Mr. Shoemaker. Thank you. To everybody else here, I truly mean it. I don't want to cry, so I'm not going to be a crier, but I'm really moved by you all applying for this position and the interest here. And frankly, if you're welcome to it, I would love the opportunity to sit down with you individually to go over some of your ideas and your thoughts, because there's no doubt about it, you reach a different part of town than I do, or that we are reaching currently. And I want to talk about ways to do that. In that
policy committee that,
oh my God, we could spend some real quality time together in that policy committee. But in all seriousness, for those of you that have indicated that you haven't seen the new, haven't been to Griffin in a while, or you haven't necessarily seen some of the problems close up, there is a community forum planned for September 27th where there will be tours given by teachers in that building. And I would urge you all to go because you obviously all have a passion for the students in this town, whether you agree on the solution or not, but see what the problems are, talk to the teachers about it, see what their opinions are, because again, it can't hurt to put eyes on it and make your own judgment from there. And so I would definitely encourage that. And again, we come back to, I would absolutely encourage you all to apply to fill. There will be 2 positions open and available to be run for in the next cycle. So with that, Mr. Shoemaker, you're welcome to, everybody's welcome to stay. Mr. Shoemaker, I would have you join us, but you have to still be sworn in, so you are not able to participate. But if you would like to join us at the table, come on up, or not, whatever you're comfortable with. But we are going to move on with the rest of our agenda at this point. Again, to the other candidates, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And
I think this much interest shows that Litchfield does truly care about our schools, whether or not we all agree on what needs to happen. And it's that's always an important, a good thing to have. So thank you for coming out. Appreciate it.
thank you. Again, everyone's welcome to stay, but we're going to keep going with our business for tonight.
Thank you.
Now you get to listen to my voice for an annoying.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for being transparent, doing this in public.
Thank you. You all get to listen to my voice for an annoyingly long time because I am covering correspondence until we select a vice chair. I believe we are selecting a vice chair at the next meeting once Mr. Shoemaker is sworn in and we have a full board again, and this will be that person's job. But for now, here we go. August 17th, an email from Mr. Totten regarding a variance request that was received by the district. There were responses by Mr. Cutter, Ms. Harrison, and Mr. Plansky. August 17th, Dr. Jetty responded to the Bernard family with questions they had about LMS recess and unstructured outside time. Also, August 17th, Dr. Jetty responded to Ms. Stevens regarding her request or for more information regarding LMS recess and unstructured outside time. There were additional responses from Mr. Cutter and Ms. McDonald. On August 19th, Ms. Sullivan circulated draft public minutes for August 16th. On August 20th, Ms. McDonald submitted her official resignation from the school board. On August 21st, Ann Inamorati circulated the manifest. I haven't had to say her name in a while. I haven't butchered it in a while. Sorry, Ann.
Nailed it.
I did? I got it?
Good.
Okay.
You got it.
All right.
Fast, just
Maybe
like
if I
that.
just go fast, it's the way to do it. August 21st, Mr. Cutter sent an email out with a suggestion to have students sign the solar panels before their installation, and there were responses from Ms. Ames and Dr. Jetty. On August 21st, Ann Inamorati circulated additional manifest documents. On August 22nd, Mr. Cutter sent an email regarding including the balloon solar payment into the capital improvement plan, and there were responses from Mr. Totten and Mr. Cutter. On August 24th, there was a parent concern that was raised about a student. I have not identified the parent or the student in order to protect the anonymity of that situation, but there was a response by Dr. Jetty. On August 27th, Ms. Rose sent a question to the board regarding questions with the First View bus app, and there was a response from Dr. Jetty and Ms. Collins. On August 28th, Mr. Totten sent an email to the school board answering board questions regarding the telephone vendor. On August 28th, Mr. Cutter emailed the school board requesting an update on the special election and warrant language, and there was a response from Dr. Jetty. On August 28th, Ms. Ames, sent an email to all staff welcoming them back and wishing them a great year on behalf of the board. On August 31st, Mr. Cutter sent an email to the board circulating the U.S. News report regarding CHS's ranking. On August 31st, Mr. Totten circulated the DOE 25 for review before signatures at the next meeting. On August 31st, Mr. Totten circulated his BA report for the next agenda. On September 1st, Ms. Sullivan circulated draft non-public minutes from August 16th. On September 1st, Ann Inamorati circulated the manifest. On September 1st, Ms. Collins emailed the board with the draft September 6th agenda. On September 6th, Mr. Totten emailed the board circulating the RFQ from Keach Nordstrom, civil engineers for the elementary school project. On September 7th, Dr. Jetty emailed key stakeholders in town, including the school board, offering to provide a tour of GMS in its current conditions, which on that day was a 95-degree day and humid day, to see firsthand some of the problems that the school was facing. On September 7th, Mr. Totten emailed the school board circulating the final school capital improvement plan. September 7th, Ms. Boucher emailed the board regarding a meeting with the superintendent to discuss her feedback. On September 8th, Ms. Ames emailed the board circulating the school board vacancy Google form for feedback, and there were responses from Dr. Jetty and Ms. Harrison. On September 9th, Dan Harrison emailed the board expressing disappointment with statements and comparisons to private school and providing additional data regarding this topic. There were responses from Mr. Cutter and then an additional response from Mr. Harrison. On September 11th, Ms. Sullivan emailed the board circulating draft non-public minutes from September 6th. On September 11th, Mr. Cutter emailed board only requesting the review of specific documents. The following were responses from Mr. Plansky, Ms. Ames, Mr. Cutter, Ms. Ames, Ms. Ames, Mr. Cutter, and Mr. Plansky. On September 15th, Mr. Totten emailed the board circulating the BA report for the September 20th meeting. On September 15th, Ann Inamorati emailed circulating the manifest. On September 15th, Ms. Collins emailed circulating the 9-6 draft agenda. On September 16th, Ms. Sullivan emailed the board circulating the 8-16 and 9-6 public minutes, and there were additional responses from Mr. Plansky, Ms. Sullivan, Ms. Ames, and Mr. Plansky. On September 18th, Ms. Reiki emailed to the board concerns about the enrollment for the class of 2027 and students that have left to attend private or charter schools. There was a response from Dr. Jetty and from Ms. Reiki, and then again by Ms. Ames. On September 19th, we received an email from Jen Ireland withdrawing her name from consideration for the board vacancy with a response from Ms. Ames. On September 19th, Mr. Hess, CHS principal, emailed the board circulating the wonderful news that Lucas Chu is a National Merit Scholarship semifinalist, and there were responses from Mr. Plansky, Ms. Harrison, and Ms. Ames. And on September 21st, Ms. Ann Inamorati, I didn't screw it up at the end, circulated additional manifest documents, and that got us through about noon today, and that's where I quit. So that is correspondence. Nice job. Breathe.
Was that
and
one
It felt like it. We're going to move on to general business, superintendent report and the enrollment report.
Yep, so the first item up is the enrollment report. A couple of things about it. The reason that I brought this back is we now have the first Friday number. So remember, we currently are looking at the August 15th number. Where were we basing our staffing decisions right before school opened? Then how many students actually showed up on the first day of school, how many students were with us on the first Friday, and then we're bearing down on the big one, which is the October 1st number. That's the number that counts. That's the number that gets compared year to year. That is the number that will go into the state for all of the calculations that they'll do on financial assistance, et cetera. So October 1st is a big number to pay attention to. And if you look at it, to Dan's point, he's the school that's grown. He started with 440 in August, and he's up to 444. So he did pick up 4 students over the course of that month. And the middle school was at 354. They're down to 350 when everything shook out. And the high school started at 384, and they're down to 383. So they had 1 student. With all the ins and outs, they were a net down 1. We continue to clean up our books, so we have students who maybe are not attending. We're trying to find if they're in an alternative placement, attending another school, et cetera, and that's why the October 1st number is the one that matters. So if we had a senior who didn't return, we're tracking them down to find out where they are and what their plan is, and to get them into a program that will lead to being a completer, but we have until October 2nd to have that done. I also asked the principals to update, as of 9/15, their class size reports, so you can see the GMS numbers. And remember, that's all color-coded against the policy. But Dan is here, so if you have a question about GMS numbers, this would be the perfect time to ask us about that, and then I'll walk you through the LMS and CHS numbers.
Questions? No questions?
The number in bold is the average, so I simply took, in the case of kindergarten, 83 kindergartners divided by 5 teachers is a 16.6 average, and then you can link that back to see that we're striving for an average of 18. Our average is actually 16.6, so we're slightly under it. But, you know, if you only had 4 kindergartens, we would be over it, so that's the right spot to be in. And you can see that right across the board with our numbers. At LMS, I believe Jen updated the numbers that you're looking at here, and so you can see exactly where that fell for LMS. And if there's a question, you could ask me now, and I'll make sure that if I can't answer it, I'll get you an answer.
They typically have 4 classes per grade, and then best. Is that what I'm seeing in the schedule?
So the teachers are teaching 4 classes, so I'm going to use grade 5 ELA. Steve Frazier's listed first. You can see that there are 5 periods that he has assigned a group of students. 4 of those would be 5th grade ELA classes. The other would be the best block,
Okay.
and then the other 2 periods are planning time.
No questions?
And at Campbell, Mr. Hess updated these numbers for us today, so they are live as of today. And again, if there are questions about class sizes or anything that you see here, I'd be happy to answer it or get an answer for you.
No questions from me? Any questions from the board?
All right, so if there's anything on those, let me know. You'll next see it in a little bit of a different format. We'll give you the enrollment numbers, but we're also going to, gosh, will I have this for the 10-4 meeting? I'm gonna try to have the enrollment projections completed for the 10-4 meeting, so it'll be where do we actually land on 10-2, and then how do we model that forward with our projections. So you'll get the first glimpse at it in that format that's traditional, you're familiar with. You've seen it multiple times, and we have that data going back quite a ways. I asked Dan to come up to the front, which he did, but now he gets all the way up to a microphone. We want to just talk about the Human Day Field Report. I'm going to talk across the district, and really the building I was most concerned about was GMS. So basically, Campbell High School, there were 2 hot days, really. It was a Thursday and Friday. And on Thursday, I spent pretty much the whole day on my feet walking around visiting classrooms. I wore shorts and a Hawaiian shirt that day, and I walked around with a temperature gun, and I was really trying to figure out what was it like. At Campbell, there are a significant number, portions of the building with air conditioning, and so those portions were pretty comfortable. The second floor was pretty steamy. I measured temperatures in the low 80s up there. And teachers were doing what they could to manage that with blinds drawn so the sun didn't come in to heat the room additionally. But we were able to, take those temperatures and measure what was happening. It was said earlier, our staff make the best of it. They figure out how to do with what they have. I don't know too many high school teachers who haven't been on a hot second floor at some point. We were not facing the high temperatures that neighboring schools talked about. There were some other nearby schools that were in the 90s. We did not hit those temperatures on the second floor, so it was uncomfortable, but it was certainly doable, and I think teachers modified what they did. Also, to note, we paid real close attention with athletics and made sure that our families understood. There was no real requirement during that time period because we wanted to make sure that that was, recognizing we didn't want anybody to get sick. We took frequent water breaks. We made sure our coaches were aware, on the alert for any sign of heat exhaustion or heat stroke. So we did what we needed to do. And I'm actually going to pause, gentlemen. I don't know if you have anything you want to add about those hot days, but they were pretty brutal.
Yeah, I was just saying, the teachers were doing everything they could. You realize that kids can't focus as much, so they were kind of laying back and they were understanding. So it was really good because you were already overwhelmed with all that heat, and it was the second week of school, so everybody's going crazy. But the teachers really helped out with a lot of that.
Yeah, to even add on to what he said, the library, it's obviously air conditioned, and there's a lot of space in there, so sometimes they'd bring in some classes in there so they can have the air conditioning, and yeah, just stuff like that. Make the best of it.
It's a really good point. Like Mr. Benoit So he taught through the day, but his fourth period class, we're talking 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the hot day, he said, I signed up the library. And he said, and I know I won't be the only one in there. And I said, smart move. So, we take advantage of it because they have that AC. So switching gears then down to LMS. LMS, we are still adjusting the HVAC system. So the company is in, I think they're commissioning, or the commissioning hasn't fully occurred yet, and there's some tweak that is taking place even this week. So, so that climate control system there is still being worked on to get it right. Warm classrooms there. The music room was like 75 degrees. That was pretty uncomfortable. And there were a few classrooms where it felt stuffy would be the way I would describe it. But temperatures were, 76 was the highest. So, I mean, they were ranging in that area, but the humidity level just felt a little bit higher than what we would have liked to have seen. And so that was sort of the general sense as we walked around there.
So the client control systems, that's the one that we've had the problem with before, that same unit?
So
a different part of this.
The music room, that was a different unit, I believe. And the other piece is that they're still working on, there are 4 modes that exist in the system, and trying to figure out which mode is going to work best given the climate situation that you're dealing with. So, for example, there is a cooling mode, and there is a drying mode, a heating mode, which we don't want, and a fan mode, which really doesn't accomplish, it just blows the air around, but it doesn't do anything to the air. And so trying to figure out drying versus cooling and what is best.
And cooling is not air conditioning.
It is not, but it is it's a different algorithm to dehumidification. And so it will, and here's the thing, on a hot, humid day, drying mode seems to be a better algorithm than cooling mode, which is counterintuitive. So I think if teachers go to the wall and they say, what do I want to hit? Oh, cooling, that's the one I ought to pick today. And in fact, that may not be the best solution. So these are the things that we're still learning about that system. And it's going to vary, if the humidity outside is 95%, which I think it was on that day, it was up there, that's going to vary then if it's a hot, dry day, it's going to, maybe cooling mode would be better. So it's getting that to be understood. And the other piece is, what can a classroom teacher control versus what should we be doing on the back end? Because explaining the algorithm to 50 people versus here's the algorithm and this is how we're going to do it. So we're still working with it.
But it sounds like LMS was the most comfortable out of the 3 buildings. Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay.
And the work at LMS isn't on the actual physical mechanical part itself. It's on the program and the online part that's behind, the scene, trying to make everything more efficient as well as comfortable for the occupants of LMS.
Thank you.
And while I ran around solo in the morning, I grabbed Doug to join me in the afternoon and gave him a second heat gun, because I said, you check the temperatures on that one, I'm checking them on, I want to make sure that we're coming up with the
Did Doug
same
also
thing.
have a Hawaiian shirt on?
He did not.
I did not. I didn't get the memo. No.
Okay.
He also didn't have shorts.
Nope.
I didn't send that memo either, so I'm sorry. So then that brings us to GMS. So GMS was by far the most uncomfortable building. And uncomfortable because the temperatures were high, but the humidity levels were pretty ridiculous also. And so now I want to paint a picture of what everybody saw and why I invited people to come down there. You had large industrial fans blowing down the hallways. We couldn't have this conversation in a hallway because the fan was so loud. And teachers would say, I have to keep my door shut because that fan is blowing outside of my room, but the fan was necessary to stop the humidity from condensing on the floor and resulting in a slip and slide. So we were sort of in that scenario with the fans. Dehumidifiers were running throughout the building, but frankly, it'd be like putting a dehumidifier in your front lawn. It's going to fill up. It's not going to do anything to the climate because because there's just, the doors open, kids coming and going. The dehumidifier is frankly ineffective, and, I'll call it a waste of electricity, and in fact, a heat generating waste of electricity. So, we have them running, but they really are not having an impact on the humidity in the building. So, Dan, can you just talk about some of the levels because Dan had a humidity detector that he was running around with.
So actually, what I did was the next day I repeated the exercise twice, and so I went around. I picked 10 random rooms or spaces that kind of captured the building, making sure to get minus the portables because those are our most comfortable and climate controlled classrooms that we have. And so I just want to say to what Dr. J just said. I put a little narrative just so I could remember too. It said this. The following table consists of temperatures and humidity readings taken in different parts of GMS on Friday, September 8th. The outside temperature on the day was 89 degrees, and it had been the fourth day of outside temperatures in the high 80s or low 90s. These readings were taken with the additional climate actions taken of industrial floor fans operating 24 hours a day, dehumidifiers, multiple box fans, lights out, windows and blinds shut. Many actions were taken to control the temperature and humidity of our indoor space at the detriment of the instructional environment needed to be created. What is not measured is the amount of moisture that's on the floors of many hallways and classrooms. It is moist enough that shoes squeak, slips happen, shoe prints are visible, and in some cases, collections of water could be noticed. So where you'd see a little depression. I'm not talking huge puddles, but you could see collected water where the floor has settled and you just have like a little bit of a dimple. So I would just say that when you hear these numbers, hear Mike Haddad's voice when he's explaining dew point, and to that old trope, it's not the heat, it's humidity.
I'm going to imagine Al Caprillion.
Okay, yeah, you can do Al Caprillion.
Oh, good evening.
Exactly. It'll be a better voice. Go ahead, Dan.
So at around 10:30, I was getting readings of temperatures of 74% with humidity of 93%. Sorry, 74 degrees, 93%. 77, 76. So the range at 10:30, our lowest temperature reading was 74, which was matched in that room with a humidity of 93. And the highest reading I got was 80. The lowest humidity rating I got was 68%. And that was in a room that was measuring at 79 degrees. So then I repeated the exercise around 2 o'clock because I figured 10:30 is probably the tightest envelope that you have. Doors aren't starting to open for recesses to happen and things like that. So it's kind of your tightest where everything's kind of settled. But at 2 o'clock, that's the end of doors opening, multiple recesses, lunches, everything happening. And it's also just a little bit warmer in the day. At that point, that room that was 74 with 93 was now 75 with 96. So now the temperature range that we had was from 74 to 81 degrees, and our humidity ratings at that point, nothing was in the 60s. Our lowest humidity rating, again, the same spaces, was 78 degrees going all the way up to 78% all the way up to 97% humidity. And that, again, go back to that narrative. That is with those large industrial floor fans. Think about when you enter Walmart, Target, Hannaford, in the winter when they have those, it's those round, they look like a seashell almost, fans. We had 6 of those running in the hallways, just keeping the floor safe. And even still, I mean, I wasn't sneaking up on anyone because I had my back to school sneakers on, so they're brand new, and I was just, I was like, I sounded like a duck like the whole day until you get to, and one thing that we definitely, what you don't realize, and I believe you brought it up in at facilities, which is we have multiple flooring transitions, which is hard. And so when we talk about the slippery floors, if you're going in an area, you can get used to it. But if you come out of that first and second grade wing, there's a pretty stark transition because you go from carpet where you feel safe and pick up some speed straight to commercial grade vinyl, wax vinyl, and so there's that slip. The ramp is anti-slip, but at the top of the ramp is commercial grade vinyl. At the bottom of the ramp, commercial grade vinyl. So you can pick up speed and slip. There are, I think we've got it like our bathrooms utilize 4 different style of tile. And so in one of them, which again is a sealed bathroom, but it has more of a ceramic tile, which means, moist on ceramic it's like ice. And so when we were walking around, we just noticed you could feel it under your feet, just the different types of flooring style that we have all has impacts. And so there's no way of saying there's no equality to the slickness of the floor at GMS.
We, unfortunately, we had injuries that occurred as a result of slips and falls. And, it's one of those, there was a heavy email thread that went around with superintendents about what do we do. The superintendent in Merrimack closed. He dismissed everybody at noon or something, right? So he got them out of the building at the heat, at the hottest part of the day. The rest of us just felt like it's a hard call. I mean, we've been all summer long in heat. This summer was more rain than heat, but so the feeling was we need to have a regular school day. So it's a judgment call that we need to make. We are more accustomed to making it on cold and icy days, but now the heat thing is definitely coming around as a thing, and by far the worst building, in my opinion, was GMS. Doug, you can speak for yourself in terms of what you saw from a climate environment, but.
No, you just felt the heat more at GMS for sure. The humidity level there, when you walked into a room, when you walked down the hall, it's that humidity that makes you feel tired. LMS, I mean, before I had this position, I taught at 2 schools and been involved in other schools. I would have felt okay teaching at LMS. It would, knowing that was a hot day, it's like you don't get perfect on a hot day. I don't think we want to get necessarily perfect on when days are this hot, because that means that we're also then putting a lot of energy into that, which is also money as well. Northeast gets hot, gets cold. So LMS, I would have felt comfortable there. GMS, CHS, I didn't walk around too much, but GMS had that feeling that you get when you get tired quickly and you don't feel, yeah.
And something that was brought up too at facilities was we were talking about how more students kind of across the board, district wide of all ages, have more respiratory issues than when I was a kid in a hot, humid school. So
I've said on those days, if you don't feel it under your feet, that's because it's been rustled up, and you definitely feel it in your lungs. Like you just feel that, like I'm breathing. It's. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it's very much like breathing in a sauna. It has, maybe not that extreme, but that's kind of when you're taking a big breath of in a sauna, you just kind of have that heavy kind of breath to it. And again, it just makes you tired. It just makes you tired.
I think
Can I interject? Can I ask? Is that okay?
I don't make the rules.
It's up to you, Heidi.
I would say yes, but.
From experience? Sorry. No, I'm sorry. Okay.
I appreciate the field work.
Can you stay for a half hour? Because I want to hear what you're going to say. Community inputs in a half hour.
So I guess the key thing I wanted to emphasize with the board is the idea that, people in town have talked about it's been a rainy year and we don't have water running through the halls. And that's accurate, right? So it's not a flooding scenario. It's really not even a high water table scenario. What it is that the slab in that building is cooling to the point that when you take a soda can out of your fridge and you put it down and it gets condensation on it because it's cold, that's what's happening on the floors. That slab is cold. We could measure it with the gun. Any moisture in the air, any humidity in the air is condensing on that floor, and it's creating these transition problems and slip problems. And so that's really what it boils down to. So the answer is massive dehumidification to remove the humidity and to get it. And by the way, 30 to 50% is like normal. Like that's what you want to be breathing. Anything above 50% is not. That's high humidity. That's a problem.
Yeah. I'm just going on generally what the settings are if you buy a dehumidifier, and usually the lowest you can go is 25 and the highest you can go is 55. So I assume that's kind of your ideal range.
The 40s is generally where you want.
Yeah. But, I mean, that's the range on most dehumidifiers.
And we were double that in some
Yeah, that's
cases,
crazy.
right?
60.
Lowest reading was 68, highest reading was 97.
So just, again, the water problem is this problem that we're describing. It's the feel in the building, it's the condensation on the cold floor. And the fans, it's the moving of air that stops it from condensing. It's not that it's doing anything other than just keeping the air moving past the floor and drying it, so.
And again, go back, like, any solution that we come up with is just a series of catch-22s. We have to run the fans, but now because we have to run the fans, we have to close the doors. If we open the doors, then you have so you just constantly cut. There's no way to create an ideal learning environment. It's either going to be hot or sticky or loud, or on these days, it's loud, sticky, and hot.
And we had a very healthy discussion in our GMS study group on Monday, just about should we even be running the dehumidifiers. People feel good, we got a guy going around dumping buckets and buckets and buckets of water out, but it's not removing the humidity. And it's sending heat up, and it's costing a fortune to run all those dehumidifiers that really aren't doing anything, so. Any questions or comments for us, or, guidance for us?
I mean, I wish we had guidance for you, but, I mean, I wish we had a solution.
Is there rubber mats? And I mean, I know that sounds silly, like, do we ever put out mats when it's icy out or slippery, like towards the front, that could go out
Yeah, those transition areas.
in some of the transition areas?
It's a really good question. Those mats are actually very expensive, but I
Don't
think.
get me wrong, I don't think it's a great idea, but if there
Stop
were
that.
injuries commonly in certain areas, it may be worth pulling out some mats for that.
The injuries were random, though. It'd be in a classroom
In a
here,
classroom,
or.
grab the chin
So
on
I
the
don't
chair.
know that we could mat everywhere, but I also don't think we had any mats hidden. I think all the winter mats are out, but I'll double check that with
Okay,
Dave.
just-
We have all the mats based on, it's Primex or the recommendations of, 8 feet from entry points and things like that.
Yeah, okay, just curious. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Dan, thanks for
Yes.
capturing the data. That's helpful to.
Thank
to
you.
share out.
Did anyone end up coming to tour GMS
No.
on that day?
No. I mean, I sent the notice out kind of last minute. And I had a follow-up question from Kim Kleiner. So Kim and I talked, but otherwise it was,
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Just
it's an
curious.
open, I mean, to be clear, I mean, I think we've stated over and over again, we've invited the same key stakeholders,
Oh,
and it's a standing open invitation to please come and,
anytime.
Yeah.
It's anytime people want to understand the issue. It is not a simple issue. But we can pinpoint it and show folks exactly what is happening with the water there.
and again, another plug for the 27th, when we have our community forum and tours of the building. If you don't know, this is your time to find out.
I added a link because, so Kayla pulled this data, and I just want to share with the board what we've pulled. So this is the peer cohort per pupil expenditures. We, on the first, looking at the cohort tab, I have sorted that by the high school amount, using the most recent comparable number, which is the 2021-2022 number, and you can see the source for that is provided. So Litchfield is spending $16,183 per student at Campbell High School, and that is by far the lowest in our cohort. And so I just wanted to capture that for everybody. And if you work your way down, you can see at average in the state of New Hampshire, the cost per pupil is $18,869.95, so about $2,500 more. And then, as you work your way down, you can see the smaller districts, generally there's a skewing toward the high end. So Moulton Borough, very tiny district, Sunapee, very tiny district. They're spending $29,000 and $31,000 per student. I will also point out that they have lakefront that we don't have, so
Right.
the burden of that may be shared by somebody who doesn't even live in town, right?
Yeah.
But that's the reality of the amount. And then if you look at the other districts that are on the lower end of our cohort, Windham, Bedford, Hudson. They tend to be a little bit larger, and so there's more of an economy of scale that goes into it. So I sorted by high school. We could do a sort by middle and elementary. I think you would find a similar thing, that we are on the lower end of our per pupil expenditure. And then the historical tab, if you click on that, we did include the numbers from last year's DOE 25 because we know our numbers, so we were able to submit them. We're waiting on state averages to be released on the reports. But I wanted to follow up because I know the question was asked last time relative to where we fall.
Thanks. Yeah, I think my only question, and I guess going back to the DOE 25 and the MS forms that were submitted, right? When I look at this and I say, all right, this is, I guess, what, a couple of years dated, based upon the factual information from the state, how does this align to the numbers that were presented on the DOE 25 in terms of last fiscal year? Same numbers?
So if you look at the historical tab, that's Litchfield's historical. And so the 22-23 numbers, Kayla pulled those from.
The 17-1, 18-9, and 17?
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
So for last fiscal year, which would be 22-23, it was reported on the DOE 25 that our numbers for the elementary are 17-6, middle is 18-6, and high is 18-3. So how do I reconcile the two?
Good question, because I thought she pulled right off of there, so I'm not.
Well, 22-23 was just completed, the DOE, so.
Is there a year off?
I think they're a year off. That's my interpretation of what I'm seeing.
But presumably, the comparable data with other districts, theirs have increased.
Oh, probably.
To the same rate, so where we
Yeah.
fall in terms of a ranking, I can't imagine has changed.
We're still.
I wouldn't know until we see the data, but too significantly, but the last year we had the data, we certainly were the smallest in our cohort.
I just want to be careful because the presentation of the cohort data in 21-22, right, says $16,000 on average, 17, right, at the middle. That's not current. That's not actual for our town as reported in the DOE 25.
Right, because we don't have numbers from the other town because that.
We have our numbers.
We have
That-
our
that-
numbers,
that's
but
my
we
point.
don't have we
Right.
can't do a comparable chart.
On the cohort, we can, because if you click the link to the 21-22 data, which is a year old, it's 1 year out, right? It's not last year, it's the year prior. Those numbers were pulled, and that actually lines up to the historical data. If you look at the historical chart, row 3, those are the numbers. So I have to ask Kayla where she got the 22-23 numbers, because I said to her, well, we can't get those yet from the state because the report's not out, but Doug has those. So I thought those numbers matched up, so I apologize if they are not what's on the 25.
But again, for the cohort comparison, if we want to put the 18,000 number that we're talking about in there, we can't compare that to other cohorts because we don't have their
They're
data.
updated numbers,
Right.
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 But I don't think there's any dispute that our cost has gone up.
No.
It has gone up, but I predict everybody else's has too.
Exactly.
And if you click the link, that report was issued on December 28th. So by the time all the DOE 25s got
Yeah.
done and the state compiled it, so
Yeah.
we can provide it probably January 1st. We can give you an update
Couple
as to
months.
where it landed. So we're a couple of months away from being able to do the same comparison.
Yep.
Using this year's number, but we've given you the most recent. And it still has us, in our peer cohort group, we're low.
So we'll definitely adjust the 22-23 to what they are. When I saw the state report too, what I did, because the state said, you really want to really look at things, you want to look at preschool through 12, because there's different configurations of what a middle school is, what elementary school is, a little less so about what a high school is. So the most recent data they have, again, is fiscal year 22, 21-22. And so I sorted it by preschool through 12, and Litchfield was 136 out of 162 areas that were reported to the state.
So those are all PK to 12 districts?
Those are all grades that have a pre-K K through 12
Okay,
number associated with them.
yeah.
And is this all districts minus the whole transportation? I know there was a comment at our last meeting about our numbers are excluding transportation. Is that consistent for every district?
Yes.
Yep, they're pulling it from that same line in the DOE. Yeah, so this isn't, we don't report so much outside the DOE, this number, so the configures on the DOE, they double check everything, and then they pull it from the DOE.
Cool. Thank you.
The number does include like building expenses though, correct? Like the LMS project would be rolled into that number, or?
Should it be
So-
voter approved? Yeah.
It's in our budget,
Yeah.
so it's pulling numbers from the budget.
Numbers from the budget, yeah.
Any other questions on the pure pupil
So what were
pupil
those numbers?
costs?
We were 130,
6 out of
We were
162.
136 out of 162.
yeah. I think that was the new analysis that Mr. Harrison sent in too, that we're in the, below the 20th percentile for pupil spending among pre-K to 12 districts.
And then my last item is just the follow-up to the board inquiry. So we were asked at the last meeting about students who exited our middle school but did not come to our high school. So I asked the high school to pull that data for us. And then the board's seen, I'm pretty sure you've seen the email exchange with Mr. Akey. So basically, we had 7 8th graders who left our school system and did not enroll at Campbell. You can see that 2 of them moved out of town. However, they were replaced by 2 new students arriving into town, so that was kind of a wash in terms of the number. And then there were 4 students who went to Bishop Girton and 1 student who went to Dairyfield schools. So it was 5 students who chose educational experiences elsewhere. And, you know, I tried to look at that historically. You can look at classes. So again, that enrollment report is a gold mine because it goes all the way back until, I think, 2005 with the enrollment numbers. And, you know, there are classes where we've gained 10. There are classes where we've lost 10. I mean, it's kind of, it really depends on the year and the class and kind of conditions that are going on. And, you know, I did ask the high school if they had asked the question of families, and they said they had not. I'm going to be honest, I disagree with it, and I'm going to share why. You know, we are a state that has passed numerous laws about parental rights. I believe in parent rights. I believe that, you know, people should make the best educational choice for their own child. And I'm not threatened or alarmed if somebody is exercising that right and going to another school. That's what we base everything on. Educational freedom accounts have come along to support families to make that decision financially. That's the climate that we're working in. I think we want to focus on being the best we can be. I would be shocked if somebody would leave because they find us inferior and wouldn't have told us that numerous times in multiple formats. I think we have the data. But I'm going to be honest, you know, I got 2 girls, and if I withdrew them from the public school and chose to go to a Catholic school or a charter school or a private school, and the superintendent or the principal called me up and said, "Why'd you do that?" I'd tell them to pound sand. I did that because I'm the father, and that's my choice. And so I just think we have to be mindful of that as we are weighing this. It doesn't mean we don't want to know, but I think we hear the data, we hear the information, but at the bottom line, when somebody decides how they best want to educate their child, I don't call homeschool families and say, "Why are you doing this?" I say, "Best wishes to you," because that's the choice they've made.
Yeah, I think I would take the opposite take. It's much like when a person leaves our employment, we do an exit interview. We should find out why. They may not have said anything because they don't want to say anything and have it come back on their kid. So it's a delicate balance, but we should find out why people leave. And I think we talked about it before, somebody's going to this school for sports or for a particular program. That's all well and good. We're going to lose kids, we're going to gain kids. But if there is a particular driver, we should identify what the driver is and fix the problem.
We're assuming there's a problem though, Peter.
Well, we don't know that there isn't because we're not asking the question. Right, so I think it'd be a worthwhile, and people may or may not respond. They may tell you to pound sand, or they may not answer the question. I don't think it's necessarily a phone call, but I think it maybe is an email or a question, and if they're out of the school, they don't have to worry about any sort of payback for being negative. But I think it's, again, just like any employee who leaves the district, we should find out why.
Other thoughts? So I guess the question is, I think we talked about doing a survey last time. What does the high school think? Do they feel like they want that data? Or
So
is
I
that
guess we should ask that question in the high school.
Yeah.
You know, they don't even know the students.
They haven't had them.
The students haven't had the experience of the high school. And so if they're told, again, for lack of a better term, rumor mill, presuppositions about what things are like, you know, how helpful is that? They do a lot of outreach, they reach out to families, we pay attention to 2 transitions, 4th to 5th and 8th to 9th, right? So those are 2 that we pay careful attention to and try to shepherd, but.
So I guess I'm not trying to be difficult at all about it, but I do happen to have a student in this particular class that we are talking about, so I'm aware of the families that chose to leave the district. I have had conversations with several of the parents that chose to do that. I do think they would respond to a survey, the ones that I know, some may not, but I do think that they would provide some feedback as to what went into their decision making. I know at least one of them, if not 2 of them, have older students that are still at CHS. So they didn't pull their students completely. They have 1 at Bishop Burton now and 1 at CHS. I can say that for certain for at least 1 family. I believe it's 2. And then they have an LMS student. Another family has an LMS student still at LMS. I do think they'd be forthcoming. So I don't think it hurts to ask the question. If they choose not to answer, I think that's fine. I think the concern, at least from Miss Reiki's perspective, was there was a number of 95 being used initially, and so that's versus 90 that graduated from the 8th grade. So that's 5 students is a big difference. If you're looking at 10 students that left versus 5 students, you know, I can understand why that would raise alarms. I certainly think there's past data that supports the fact that this isn't an anomaly, that this isn't a problem. However, I also understand that it isn't, I don't believe it's harmful to ask the question. So,
It might be interesting to just have go back and see how many did not enroll at CHS for the past, I don't know, 10 years.
Mike did that
I didn't
in that email. Or not for 10 years, but he
You
pulled.
picked
No, but
a few years.
again, that's real easy to pull.
And I mean, every class is different, every student is different.
Absolutely.
But your numbers are balancing that with new additions for that class as well, or were we able to parse out just those
No,
that were
because there was
in?
2 that moved out and then
left?
2 that moved in. So those are the ones that offset each other. And then there was the 5,
Yeah.
4
But
to
if we don't
BG.
want the offset, if we just want the
Right.
true number of students who are leaving.
Yeah,
we
not the
know
net
that there's
student gain
offset.
or
We know
loss.
that there's students also moving in,
But,
but if there's just students leaving, what's that number?
Okay, but I mean,
But I think that's Mrs. Reiki's point as well.
2 that moved out of town, we don't control if the parents move.
Agree.
Do you think the survey should be sent to moving parents, I guess is my question, versus parent?
Right. How do you decide
That's
who gets
broadening the
surveyed?
question to me. I think it's more about who could still be going but isn't going and why, is I think what the driver is behind the question.
And I think that's 100% the spirit of what we're trying to get at, is
Yeah.
just getting a barometer into the why.
Right.
Why are you making a different decision and not choosing, in this conversation, Campbell?
If
Or-
you choose to share, and if you don't
If you choose to share, right? If you don't, that's your prerogative.
and it's because it's what's best for my kid, then
That's okay too.
I am perfectly happy with that answer.
Likewise.
Am I allowed to participate in this meeting or not until I'm sworn in?
You're not sworn in.
You're not sworn in yet, I'm sorry.
But,
Just asking.
community comment is coming
It's
in.
coming up in 10 minutes, 8 minutes.
Then we want to hear all of it.
So I would say, can we inquire, again, I don't think it needs to be an in-detail survey by any means, but just a few questions to just kind of get some general feedback as to why.
I guess what I would ask is, send me the questions you want us to ask.
Okay.
Because I don't want to reach out to people, come back, and then hear, oh, that wasn't really what we wanted to know.
Understood.
So send me the questions, and we will find a way between the middle school and the high school to
Absolutely.
make that inquiry.
Board members, if you have any, there's a little bug. If you have any questions or language that you want to use in particular, can you send to me by Friday, please?
I'm all set.
Okay, but anyone who does.
Sure.
Excellent. Anything else for the superintendent's report?
Good, thank you.
Thank you. We still have some time, so moving on to business and operations. I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Totten for our second meeting of the month.
All right, great, thanks. So the first thing that I put on there is the change orders at LMS. So the first spreadsheet has been available to the public for quite a few months now. We're at the end of the project, so at the end of the project, sometimes you start seeing some of the change orders become finalized and show up more. Now with a change order, usually they happen for one of three reasons. One is you go into a project with a certain scope, they bid on that scope, and that's the price that becomes a guaranteed maximum price. So if you have something that is a change in that scope or over that scope, that would be a change order. If you have something that can't be necessarily predicted, that's not built into the scope, therefore that's going to be a known change order to come type of thing. And if you have something that was just never in the scope at all and was added through the life of a project. So whenever you talk about a project, a multi-million-dollar project, you're going to experience and expect change orders. So, I talked about this before, that a number that was given to me was, you should kind of think of it, you might have up to 7% of the starting price end up being change orders. And that's where a lot of, whether that be families or school districts, they would budget that in extra too, knowing that that's a normal part of that process. So 7% of the original would be about $428,000. So we're not at that point, but we are at a point where the combination of our change orders and the fact that we still have our guaranteed maximum, but remember that guaranteed maximum was pushed longer than it was supposed to be. So the work from the subs, if they might have been paying a sub, 25 hours, that first summer that they were working, well, now maybe that sub's getting paid $27 per hour that second summer type of thing. So they can't go past the maximum, but a lot of times in projects, you'll have less than the maximum be used. So we're at a point between change orders and the fact that the project, which a lot of projects did, got pushed longer due to the supply chain issues, we're to the maximum, and then we have change orders. So what does that mean? So we can look at the potential change orders, which we believe are the remaining change orders. And again, you'll see some that you can't predict. Like, we couldn't predict how much waste oil would be in the tank when they finally removed it. So they're not going to have that part of the bidding price. So when it came, there was, and that oil isn't cheap to get rid of. So to get rid of it, that was $3,299. Now, before that, we had our company come out and siphon out about 5,000 gallons of usable oil. We didn't go down to the bottom because we didn't want the sludge to then impact GMS. So we purposely left oil there. And the oil that we purposely left there had that charge associated with it. So you can see, there's definitely most times the change orders are additions. There is one change order where, it's $22,000, which would now be taken off of the bill. That has to do with the air handling unit in the gym. That was in such a spot, and that to get a new air handling unit in there would have been very costly to build the supports and things like that. So what they did was they stopped the air handling unit and they repaired, or they brought in new motors, new parts. They tried to kind of get it as functioning as smoothly as possible, and they gave it an allowance to do that work because they didn't know what that would end up looking like. So that allowance, I think, was around $40,000. They ended up spending more like $18,000, so we get that $22,000 back. So here we see, the change orders and how it's impacting the total contract. So the next spreadsheet that's linked in my report also has two tabs at the bottom. And the second one, which I'm not going to focus on too much, but I just want to give that for historical perspective for people, is from the start for phase 2 work at North Branch, what money was used, when was it used, when did the change orders impact the total contract, and where are we? So I kind of, on that first tab, the North Branch fiscal year 24, I really isolated down to where we are now. So we came into this year with about $281,000 left in the municipal lease and $428,027 from fiscal year 24 funds. We believed when we were doing the budget at the time last year, working with North Branch, that that would have covered everything. It's not going to cover everything. So how do we get to not covering everything? So we have $407,000 remaining on the contract, which we believe we're going to be billed in full. So again, the guaranteed maximum price still stands. They're not charging us above the guaranteed maximum price, but they're charging us in full. And then, so that gets us to a deficit. Now, there are 4 things that help out with that deficit, or potentially could help out with that deficit. So part of a prior change order was the encumbered money that we have for the surge protection, which was $7,500, which we brought from the board. Board thankfully approved that. That work has yet to be done because the parts haven't come in, but that is revenue or money. The next thing on the lift is the chairlift. So even if this project wasn't going to be done, the chairlift, which brings a student or an adult from the cafeteria floor to the stage floor, was broken and needed to be repaired. Part of that was getting a new chairlift in, but also part of that was the new chairlift is a different size than the old chairlift, and then it had become more ADA accessible. So there's been some extra charges along the way. So the extra charge you see there of $6,856 is we had to cut into the stage in order to make the chairlift ADA accessible, and which was a change from where it was originally located. So that work went through North Branch, partly because when the work was going to happen, North Branch was on site and North Branch was in the cafeteria, and they had the people in hard hats and they were kind of controlling the schedule, and they can do that work. So that work got added onto the North Branch contract, but would have been a general fund expense. So whether it's today or next time, I would like to kind of have to ask for a transfer from building services in that amount to Fund 30, because it typically would have came out of general fund. The next thing, which has
Can I
been...
ask one question? Who ordered the chairlift that didn't fit?
So,
It wasn't necessarily just that it didn't fit. You could, the old lift to the top of the stage was in a closet.
Yeah,
So
I've
you
seen
couldn't
one.
fit a wheelchair into the closet and maneuver into the lift.
I
So
thought
the
that was
old
because of the
lift-
way it was installed or
Well,
something.
the previous lift, you could access. The newer lifts are bigger, so they're just designed differently than they were in 19. I don't even know when, I don't know if that was original to the building or not. But when the company came out, I mean, their company is an ADA accessibility company. And we said, we need a chairlift to get somebody up to the stage. Why they would think that we didn't want an ADA accessible one was beyond us. And they indicated that we didn't specify it needed to be ADA accessible, to which we said, but that's what you do. Why wouldn't it be ADA accessible? So they ordered and installed that lift, but it did not pass inspection by the state.
And there's no pushback on that
No,
company.
you were here.
No, that was before me.
Yeah.
So, so when it got installed and we realized it wasn't ADA compliant, look back at the contract, and what we decided between us and the company was that they would pay for the parts to switch out as well as the labor, and we would pay to remove that section of the stage. Wasn't exactly what we wanted to pay for, but at the end of the day, we need to have something that's ADA compliant and safe for any kid or any adult.
And if memory serves me, that was actually the less expensive. There were other options on how to make it compliant, and this seemed to be the kind of least expensive way to go.
So also on here is, which we've talked about before, there's been a change order before, which again was work associated, which eventually would be with solar. And again, at the beginning, we don't own solar. We're gonna be part of a power purchasing agreement for that. So any of that solar equipment isn't owned from us at the start. So the work that was happening was in the electrical room by North Branch people, and they needed to, it made sense to get the work done at the same time, but we're contracting with North Branch, not the solar. So the decision was made to have the work done while Liberty Electric was there, and then when we start paying back the PPA, instead of paying, we don't pay back the first 25,000 of that. So that's money that should be coming back as soon as the PPA goes into effect, which would offset this. Then you see the AHU credit. So again, that's being listed here just because it's still included in that last 407,000 that's left on there. So that will be kind of coming back. Then you can see, again, we start chipping away though, and we end up back in the negatives. Obviously not a place where any of us want to be, not a place where we thought we were going to be, because we spent a decent amount of time looking at what this year would be with North Branch back when we budgeted.
So what's the total deficit for this year?
So the total expected deficit for this year is 32,371.
How much are we paying? Let me rephrase the question, I think. How much are we going to be paying to close out all of the work at the middle school from our general fund? Not from the lease.
Well, the general fund, so we appropriated money for this year, which was part of the capital projects fund. So that was that 428,000. So how much additional are we going to use from the general fund? So that's that 33,000, 32,000. So where would we typically try to find that money would be, by expecting less things to go wrong in the middle school, because everything is a new system. But remember, when we budgeted for this year, we made purposeful decisions to bring down the budget for repairs of the middle school, already knowing that the systems were going to be new and under warranty.
So what was the first number you had said that we budgeted for the capital fund?
So we budgeted for capital projects fund, we budgeted for remaining North Branch work, remaining work from Dave Ely and Windy Hill, as well as remaining resilient work, which are the commissioning agents, and a little bit of money for work with consultants type of things. So that was $470,504 or $505.
So in that, I remember during our budget season last year, right, where this was a known gap, and we were trying to include it in the budget because it's a known gap.
Yep.
Known deficit.
Yep.
And now we're saying, in addition to that 470, there's another 32 that we need to fund. Okay.
That is what we're saying.
Okay, now I understand. So the total deficit for fiscal year 24 is $502,000 and change.
I would just use two sentences to describe that, because a deficit would mean that we need to raise that money. We've already raised and appropriated 428,000 of that. So if if we want to say the amount of tax dollars that are going to the project in fiscal year 24, that would be the combination of those two.
Yeah, thank you.
So can I ask a question more simply? And these numbers don't have to be perfect for this meeting today, but how much was the whole project supposed to cost? And what are we going to spend to finish it total? Regardless of the money source, I know there was so much that was part of the, it was like $7 million or something, and then it was, so what have we actually spent?
So, the first spreadsheet, which is the change order spreadsheet, on the change order summary, you can see the contract starts up in kind of the shaded in orange of 6.128 million. And then you can see how it's impacted by change orders. So the only way the contract is impacted is by change orders. The first change order brought the contract down, and then most of the other change orders brought the contract up. So with the potential change orders, which are really, the reason why they're called potential is that they come in singular form, and they either get approved or denied, and then a lot of times they group them together. So they haven't done that final part of grouping them together to add them onto the contract. So, but pretty much think of those potentials as a confirmed one as well. So if we look at row 16, we go across from potential, we can see that the final contract price was $6,385,443. Now, of that money, roughly 25,000 will be reimbursed from the solar. So again, not really part of the scope that will be reimbursed by the solar. And what I'm saying is that about 6,800 would have typically been from the general fund for that lift, because that's kind of where it started. But still, at the end of the day, North Branch, we're expecting to pay them a total of $6,385,443.71. And so just a reminder for everyone, when we get a North Branch invoice, that's what goes into my board reports, and there's a link to it. And a lot of times, if you see the link, you can scroll down for, sometimes it's 40 pages, sometimes it's 70 pages. So their information on how they're adding up to their number is all there. So that, the most recent time we had a North Branch invoice that was reported out to the public was my last school board meeting. So if you went into that agenda and those minutes, you could click on that link and you'd be able to kind of see what work happened, in that case, in July.
I'm looking for that PDF report. That's what I'm searching for right now. The PDF report that is signed, that goes through the change orders and the 40 pages or so, all PDF.
Yep.
Is that what you're referring to as
Yep.
well? I don't see that in your last meeting invite for some reason.
So
Because
it's in the
I remember in that first
September
page.
6th one.
It is in the September 6th. All right, let me
Yeah,
just jump
so,
back
I
real
mean,
quick.
Trying to share it again right now just with the board, but my computer's going a little gray.
September
And I
6th.
also refer to our handy dandy chart of communication here, and it looks like Doug sent us his BA report on August
Yeah,
31st.
the July invoice, that's what it is, right. So on the July invoice, okay, 6,128,000.
So, and one of the next things I was going to bring up, on the July invoice, we were expecting to use municipal lease money, the remainder of that plus the appropriated money for fiscal year '24. Now, part of using the end of the municipal lease is to figure out how much you exactly have, so you can use it all up, including the interest. So that took a little while, and then, because people were on vacation, different things like that. And then when we got it, I received something that we also had to sign off on and said, because according to them, if we're using up the municipal lease, the project would have been done, and therefore everything would have been installed and operational. Now, everything is installed, but we're making tweaks. So we're not going to sign off that a project is done. We haven't signed off with North Branch that it's done until we're at a better spot, which we're getting to. So I didn't want to sign off the paper with Bank of America that we're necessarily done at this point either, because we're waiting on some tweaks at that point. So we shifted to using all of for that invoice, the appropriated funds for fiscal year '24, and then out of our next invoice, we believe that the issues that we're having will be fixed by that point. One of the issues that we're having is with VRF6, and it's making a harmonic noise, and it's mainly impacting the computer room. So North Branch is tentatively scheduled to come out this Friday to do a couple things, including above the ceiling work as well as above the tile work, which would be spraying and foam insulation in order to what they believe would almost overcorrect the problem. But they know that we're not okay with having one less classroom, so they would rather at this point overcorrect than undercorrect the problem. So they still have a couple things to do before we're comfortable with the project being where it needs to be. But again, that we believe is going to be done by the time that we really need to pay. Well, we'll wait to pay the next invoice until that's done anyways. And at that point, we would sign off on the Bank of America that we're in a good spot, use the end of the remainder of that money, as well as fiscal year '24 appropriated funds, as well as 33,000 of funds that we're going to have to kind of find money for this year as well. So this wasn't, obviously, as people talk about transparency, this wasn't an intent. Obviously, we'd be doing a lot better if we budgeted a lot higher for this year and gave ourselves more wiggle room than we did. We tried to kind of get to a number that worked, and we weren't able to succeed, but you can see the transparency on where we are now.
Okay, thank you. I think the surprise when looking at the manifest was the fact that we were using this year's fiscal year money to pay that when the municipal lease was still outstanding, and that was what
Gotcha.
I had a question. Yeah.
Any other questions from the board on the change orders or LMS renovations conversation?
All right, so financial reports, they're not as interesting at the beginning of the year because there's not as much money spent. But again, any questions that people have on that, definitely, I know sometimes they come up here, sometimes they come out after the fact, definitely email me too, because there's always a lot to look at. Some of those reports are 80 pages or so long.
My only question is on transfers. I didn't see any recent transfers over the past month and a half. I just wanted to make sure that was accurate.
So the transfers
were on
they're on there, but I didn't see any updates to transfers, any recent transfers.
So there's one from 9/14. So if you click on the one for the 9/20/23 school board meeting,
Yep.
and these would have been transfers as of last Friday when Ann runs the report.
Yep.
So at 11:52.
Yep.
So we have some from 9/14, some from 9/13, some from 9/12, but they also include all of the other transfers that were there as well.
Time period, yep.
Yeah.
They kind of build on each other
Yep.
as it goes through.
Got it. I see the hyperlink now. Thank you.
And the last thing on my report, which I just added today because we just got the news today, is that the DOE 25 it's reached the approval status, so we submitted it. They asked for some corrections. The corrections did not change any of the revenue, the total revenue or expenditures or the bottom lines. Like, for example, I had lumped together some revenue from tuition and they wanted me to separate it out, which made sense.
Yep.
So I did that. And there was one spot where for out-of-district tuition, I didn't put it with a private place, I put it with a public place, so I just had to switch the number there. So, but again, it didn't change any final numbers, and that's at the approval state. So I'll get that on, just like our previous DOE 25, so I'll get that on our webpage as well.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions for Doug on the board? Okay, we have reached and gone past the 8 o'clock hour, so we will open the floor to our second community input, and anyone is welcome to comment on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. And we've had 2 people from the audience already try to speak, so I'm going to invite you to come on up and give your comments because we definitely want to hear them.
I didn't necessarily intend to interrupt. I just thought, Ginny Ningtel, and I teach first grade at GMS. And I just thought a little glimpse of real life experience during the heat wave at our lovely resort over there, GMS. And we talked about those huge industrial fans, and those are not just a nuisance, they're not just noise pollution. I want to paint you a picture. First graders don't know how to do school yet. That's what we spend at least a month teaching them. Part of that is how do we walk in the hall safely. And we, in first grade, 3 out of 4 classes have 20 kids this year. No paras, not because they aren't needed, but because the positions are unfilled. And that 20 that 20-kid long line of 6-year-olds spreads very long down the hall. We have to keep tight control on that. We teach them to not spin around backwards because you're going to bump into the person in front of you. Don't swing your water bottle around. You're going to give that kid a concussion. You cannot bang off the walls like a pinball machine. And during the heat wave, we teach them, or during humidity time, we teach them that you have to walk slower than usual. We talk about marshmallow feet, to be very slow, careful steps. We try ice skating. We slide our feet so that we're not picking our feet up so that they don't slip. So put in the industrial fans and they can't hear us. We can't teach them these things. We can't keep them safe. The couple that are near us can, but we can't yell down the hall over these fans for them to hear us. And so it becomes a significant safety issue, not just a nuisance. So I want people to understand that. And so your precious little 6-year-olds, you maybe have the youngest one, right? Send your precious little 6-year-old to be trusted by these teachers. The last thing we ever want for them or to happen is for them to get hurt. And I can't necessarily keep them safe. I had one of my students just get up from her seat to throw away her trash. Her feet slipped out from under her. She banged her face on the floor. She split open her chin. The nurse considered calling an ambulance because she was that concerned. They ended up reaching her parents that were able to come quickly to take her to be evaluated for stitches. It's the last thing you want to happen. So wet floors are not just a nuisance, they're a real danger. We also had to have a refrigerator moved because it was too much load on our electrical load at that end of the building. So a refrigerator that the teachers put their lunches in had to be moved. And when it was moved, we found the wall behind it covered in mold. So it's not, like Dan said, it's not just the slippage danger. The danger of what we're doing to our lungs, the kids' lungs, is a real worry for us. So I just wanted to share that reality.
The board realizes this, I'm sure, right? But the unsaid thing tonight is we're talking about the kids. It's also a tremendous hazard for our staff.
Absolutely.
Right, so thank you.
Hello. That'll be the last time you have to sit over on that side of things.
Matt Shoemaker again. I guess I'll piggyback on that. I wasn't going to talk about that, but I mean, that's appalling. That really is appalling. And I think that that's a lawsuit waiting to happen, number one. Number two, I think the only thing that can be done, right, and it's very disruptive, but Dr. Jetty talked about you have to make decisions on whether to close schools. And if we're not going to invest in our schools, we're going to have to close them when things like this happen. And our kids are going to suffer as a result of that. And I don't know if you can close one school or if you have to close an entire district if you're doing that, whereas the other two schools are not having those issues. But I mean, I think it's time to start having conversations about the real implications of this if we're going to just pretend that there's a fix and it's easy and you're just going to make do. 6-year-olds can't be sliding on wet floors and cracking their faces open. I mean, that's just unacceptable. And we can't ask our educators and administrators to spend countless hours trying to find mats and we've now wasted how much collective money and salaries running around with temperature gauges in humidistats just to prove to everyone that this is a problem. It's mind-blowing to me. So if you're watching this and you want to come see what the issue is, the invitation's out there. Come see the issue. And if you think that there's another solution, please bring that solution to the table, because as you hear, we're now at the point of having people run around with temperature gauges and fans and children bashing their faces off the ground. So that's the state of affairs. With respect to measuring and gathering information about students leaving in between 8th grade and 9th grade, I agree, Dr. Jetty, if you called me and said, why are you doing this? I would be annoyed if you asked me that. However, I think I do agree that it's pertinent information. I think where we get a lot of feedback is that people say, oh, there's a problem with this district because we have kids leaving. And I don't think we should shy away from gathering that information. I think, granted, when an employee leaves a company, a lot of times it may be for negative reasons, right? So you don't always get great information out of that. But if you're asking in the context of, we're always trying to figure out what we're doing well and what we could be doing better. So if you don't feel the need to answer this, that's totally fine. But if you do, we really do appreciate the information. I think that we can avoid that problem. But I do think it's pertinent information that I think a lot of people would benefit from having gathered, because then we can share that information with people when they say, oh, obviously this school district's not doing a good job. They lost 5 kids this year. And that may have been for sports or someone moving out of town. But if someone moves out of town because they're moving to a district that they think has a better school system, I do think we want to know that. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we will go ahead and close our second community input of the night. Thank you for your input, and we do appreciate it, your candor and your honesty. So, moving back to, on our agenda, to public minutes. We have the August 16th and September 6th public minutes. I'll entertain any motions.
Did we want to do these separately, because I believe Mr. Plansky had an amendment?
Sure.
I had to change that. I think I actually did it correctly on the document, so it's in there.
Okay. Do you remember which one?
Page 6.
Of the August 16th.
Oh, the 16th.
I just want to make sure I knew which one we're looking at.
Okay, so I will make a motion to approve the August 16th minutes.
I will second for discussion. And then Mr. Plansky, you wanted to amend those minutes, I believe, and put a comment here. So, yep, that is on page, you did do it correctly, good job.
Look at that.
So Mr. Plansky would like to modify the paragraph to indicate that he requested a copy of the letter from the seller's attorney and that Dr. Jetty denied that request. So if you want to make a motion to amend.
I'll make a motion to amend.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and then I'll open it up for discussion. Thoughts on the change?
I didn't have time to go back and watch the video.
I did. I don't recall there being a denial, so I'm not sure that's the right word. Did you have a chance to go back and watch it?
I did. I never said that. It's not on the tape. And I asked our recording secretary, Jan, who ultimately is the one who's responsible for producing minutes that capture what occurred, to review that and to make sure that she typed a paragraph that reflected what occurred in the meeting, and she is submitting to you the paragraph that's there. And when I read what she submitted and watched what occurred, I felt that that was accurate to what occurred.
So I think I asked you, and maybe the wording is incorrect. I think I said, you sent the letter to Heidi, you forwarded it to Heidi, right? And I said, can I see that letter? And you said, no. Or I said you wouldn't share that. I said, and you won't share that with me. And you said, correct. And it was just kind of sort of, there's a lot of crosstalk there at that point, but.
I did not say correct. What I said is that I shared it only with Heidi because I did not want it to be construed as a right-to-know request. By sharing it with the board, it would open it up. Remember, I have a document that's labeled privileged and confidential, and I did not share it with the board because then it would go beyond that to a potential right to know.
If it goes to more than one member of the board, it becomes.
If it goes to the majority of the board, then it would be a document that is subject to right to know, is my understanding. And so I did share it with Heidi because I said, can you just, am I misconstruing something with this? So, and that's what I explained. I actually did not answer the direct question. I said, this is what I did and why I did it. That's what the minutes reflect, and that's what the video shows.
And
I didn't go back and watch the video, so I'm going on what I recollect, and I recollect aligned to what Mr. Plansky, but clearly I can go back and watch the video. It sounds like that's what's needed here.
Yeah, I did watch the video. Like I said, I don't recall it being denied. I recall the request, but I don't think the request was answered directly. So I would not use the word denied. I'd be fine if you want to say Mr. Polanski requested a copy of the letter.
I'll go back and watch the video, but if you want to, people want to understand why there's a trust issue. There's not transparency within this board. We can't be transparent with the public. So anything, to my mind, especially with all the stuff that's going on, information should be shared with the board, not kept in a silo between you and the chair or you and the vice chair. We all should get the same information at the same time so we can make the best possible decision. And this just demonstrates why we have a trust issue.
I agree, but back to the approval of the minutes, right? I think we need to table this another meeting so I can watch the video.
Yeah, I'll go back and watch the video too. That's certainly from my recollection. So I'll make a motion to table the approval of the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor of tabling the August 16th minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? I didn't hear what your vote was.
Aye, it's fine. We can table it.
Okay, so it is tabled with a 4-0-0 vote.
Do you remember where in that meeting, like timestamp wise, that was by chance?
I'll go back and watch it, Andrew. I think I have a general idea. I'd have to sort of fast forward through it, but I'll go back and find it.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the September 6th minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any conversation or discussion? All in favor of approving the September 6th, 2023 minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? 4, almost said 5, 4-0-0. Moving into old business, planning for the community forum on the 27th, which we've talked about a few times tonight. We have this flyer here. Unfortunately, it says I don't have access right now. I have seen it though, because I've seen it publicly on Facebook, so I don't know why suddenly on the agenda there is no access.
There hasn't been access. I know I requested it and it was granted access, so I can see it if you need it.
It's the same one that's on the forum.
Yeah.
It's all over Facebook, and it's been posted by all of the
Saying
principals.
I don't have access, so I'm not even sure where the link came from now.
But regardless, that flyer is there.
The flyer looks great. My concern is on the community forum itself. I don't know that it's the right time to have the forum.
I understand that concern. I think the goal of the community forum is to open the doors to put eyes on the problems at GMS, regardless of whatever the solution is going to be. And the goal is to begin the discussion of what could and or should, or what are people in town's opinions regarding what should happen to the GMS building and or land if something happens. And so I think the scope is fairly narrow and broad enough to be able to, with the tours from the teachers, that's really giving people in town that opportunity to put eyes and hear from someone who's similar to the 3 minutes we just heard from Mrs. Anktel regarding her day-to-day experience. I think it's important to have that and to be able to have that feedback from particularly a portion of town that, if they come, which I hope they do, regardless of what happens to the old building, because I know that's a concern from a lot of people, and that's been asked a lot, and we don't really have an answer for it, except, well, what do you think? So I think if we focus on those goals, the forum is appropriate, in my opinion. The timing is okay for the forum, and we should plug ahead. I'll entertain a motion if you want to move anything. Okay. Also in old business, we had talked about budget committee.
Yes, so budget committee, thank you. Budget committee is starting to pick up their rhythm of meetings starting next week, which is great. We're going to start off with the town, just like past years, right? We're going to start off with the town for really the next month or so, and then shift into the school. I don't have the exact dates for school in front of me, but it'll probably be in about a month.
November 2nd is when we will bring the budget to the board.
Perfect.
In the round with budget committee members in attendance to observe those presentations. So November 2nd is our big kickoff. For board awareness, we had our first round of budget development meetings today. It was a full day, wasn't it?
Yep.
Of budget development.
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on there was some debate back and forth here about what the process is and the correct mechanism to submit budget committee questions. I just want to be prepared for that as we shift into that season and what the right mechanism is. So I heard a spreadsheet. I think that's what Ms. Hirschberger used last year on the budget committee, whatever. I don't know that I have access to that spreadsheet. If that's the mechanism that the questions will be submitted and tracked, great, fine. I just want to confirm the process for questions so we're ready to go to answer the budget committee.
So I can only speak from my understanding. We had a meeting with budget committee chair and budget committee vice chair back in May, June. Something along those lines. And we talked about this process of streamlining questions. I think the goal would be for you as the school board rep to answer as many questions as you can while at the meeting or deflecting. And so putting those questions forward on the spreadsheet, at that point, I'll review them and then we can, I think the only concern is just there's a lot of information and questions that are being asked right now. And I come back to the conversation that we had via email, which is there's only so much time on our administrator's schedule that they can devote to these things. And so how do we get these questions answered appropriately, transparently, and in a timely manner while still being able to do the business of the district, I think is the rub.
So the immediate next step is, can I please receive the link to the spreadsheet?
Absolutely.
And then secondly, there was a follow-up question submitted by Ms. Stevens after our last meeting. I did put that in the budget committee highlights and notes. I've tagged the superintendent to that question. And the question was specifically about kitchen and classroom expansions and impact fees. So I would just remind the administration that there's an outstanding question that is there from the budget committee.
I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but that question is a good example. Was that question asked at a budget committee meeting?
It was asked in a follow-up email
Okay.
by a budget committee member.
Was the full budget committee copied on that question? Okay. That's the part I want to understand, because I think if an individual budget committee member has a question that isn't shared by the full budget committee, it would be appropriate for that budget committee member to reach out directly to Mr. Totten, correct? Not as a budget committee member, but as a parent or as a person, right?
So.
I don't want to open Pandora's box here either.
This is the piece that I think we're trying to figure our way out. So first of all, we want to answer questions. It's not like we don't want to answer questions, but frankly, we could spend all day answering questions. And so we have to find a balancing point. And is it a question of a budget committee member or is it a question of the budget committee? That's why the agreement, longstanding practice, by the way, this was in place when I came to Litchfield, was for chairs to talk to chairs. So the chair can do that filter to say, yep, this is a general concern of the committee and it's within the purview of the scope of the committee. So it will be transmitted from chair to chair versus it's an individual budget committee member with a question, in which case they really should be directed. If you'd like to know, ask the question. And I'm going to be honest, email, we're buried. We cannot stay on top of the volume of email that we're getting, cannot. And so, it's much easier to place a phone call. I can do that from the car. I'm driving anywhere. I can either listen to the radio or I can talk to somebody and answer questions. So, sometimes I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but, really if it's the budget committee asking a question within the purview of the budget committee, then it should be chair to chair, and that's why the spreadsheet was developed.
So I think giving you access to the spreadsheet is absolutely fine. You'll have access to it. I will review the questions before they are sent to Doug and Mike, and we will go from there.
Okay.
And if
Sounds
there's
great.
one that I feel like either falls outside the scope or is particularly burdensome, or there's a reason, we can talk about it and maybe try to narrow it down a bit.
I think the other piece, and so we had a conversation about this today, because we don't want to come across as we don't want to answer questions. It's a matter of there's 40 hours in a work week, and we're already way over that. And we're just trying to find balance to, and some of the stuff that we're being asked is covered in meetings. We are going over it, so it's not like.
Or in documents and reports that we already have.
Correct. And so it's like, We've answered that. So it just, that's the piece that I think we're trying to find a way to make sure that we're being clear and open with everybody, but not answering the same stuff over and over. It's a delicate balance. Do you have anything else you wanted to say on it? Because I think, you know.
No, I definitely, I like answering questions, and I like when people ask questions. I would agree that the easiest way, though, is that spreadsheet. Then we all have one place to go to it. And I think that will help out with, just for anybody.
Sounds great.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarity.
Thank you. Moving on to new business, which is none. In terms of policy updates, we spent an hour and 40 minutes or so yesterday going through, we met in person, going through policies. Again, the problem is we start to look at one and there's 14 references to other policies that are in there. So then you go to those other 14 references and then there's 6 more in each of those. So then you go to those references and we are majorly down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what the priority is of updates and whatnot. However, I'm happy to report that we were able to make some good progress on maybe a dozen.
Yeah, maybe about a
policies.
dozen. Yeah, they'll be coming to the board, I think,
Yeah.
1 or 2 for a second reading, and then
The rest for
most
first reading.
for first reading.
Yeah, so that will stay
start.
tuned for that next week. And if you, I would say to the extent that you have questions on the policies for board members, if you can take a look at them ahead of time, Andrew or I are happy to answer questions ahead of time in terms of where the language is coming from or who commented on the language or whatnot. But the majority of these are either coming directly from NHSBA language, they're coming from legal, or they're coming from specific clear resources that are designed to answer the question. So it's not so much that we're drafting new policy, it's we're editing more than anything else. Yeah,
Aligning to NHSBA as much as we can.
as much as we can. Yep.
How you guys doing? It's fun, right?
All right. We are almost done, though, I promise. I know you guys are looking at it like, all right. So, school board comments. I open up the floor.
Just back on privileged and confidential and the conversation we were having under minutes a moment ago, right? Privileged and confidential to me, I get, makes sense, but I also look at this as the board should be reviewing the privileged and confidential material. The board, our former chair, Liz, at the time, signed the purchase and sale. So why wouldn't the board be aware or have insight into that, knowing that the board signed the purchase and sale?
So I understand the comment, and I certainly understand the perspective of it. I think the struggle that I'm having, and that I think that the conversation with legal is, number one, what level does it expose the board to having that conversation become, or that communication become public, number one. I think number two, as has been commented by, I'm just going to put it out there, by legal counsel, we are a town that micromanages. We are getting a report from our superintendent regarding exactly what those communications say, and our response isn't thank you for the update, it's prove it. Show me the communication. And so, again, for transparency purposes, I definitely want to make sure that every person on this board absolutely has access to and is able to make informed decisions. And if they feel like they don't have something that they need in order to make an informed decision, I want to help you get it. But I think I put in my email, I feel like I'm constantly balancing the privileged versus the public disclosure all the time, particularly with the legal issues that we're dealing with right now behind the scenes, which, again, if made public, could result in some harm to our district. And so we're constantly balancing that. And I would love input on how to do it better. And if you feel like you're not getting it, I would love to talk about how and why and what we can do to make that process more open while still keeping it in compliance with privilege requirements, while keeping it in compliance with disclosure requirements. Because again, I don't want to keep anything a secret. It should be publicly out there. That's not the goal.
I'm not talking about publicly, but the information that the superintendent has and that you have, all the people on the board should have that information.
We gave you the information, Peter. We verbally shared.
Right, but we should get to see it too, Michael. Okay,
I'm gonna disagree. If I,
okay,
as
you can
your,
disagree, and that's
as
fine.
if I, as your superintendent, am reporting to you, I not once have ever lied to you, I not once have withheld information from you, and when I tell you this is what legal has advised,
Okay,
that's
legal,
there.
legal
And
works
when-
for the board, not for you.
No, legal works for the district,
Okay.
not the board.
And,
So
and
the district
legal.
is the board, is it
No,
not?
it's not.
No, and legal was really clear. They take orders or they take direction from the superintendent. Because I'm the hired person to communicate that.
Then that probably needs to be
Can you?
addressed.
I'm just saying that that's the process. And again, the only reason I shared it with Heidi was second eyes on it. Am I missing something? Is there something here that, you know, or if somebody's gonna doubt me, I need somebody else to back that up. Heidi, how many hours did you spend last week on school district matters? Seriously?
I'm not joking. I spent more than 45 hours doing school board stuff last week, between LEA negotiations, between correspondence, between phone
10
calls
hours
with
in
legal.
correspondence.
Yeah, no kidding. 10 hours, different hours with legal, and I'm not complaining about it.
I'm
But
not
I
either.
don't know that it's my job to micromanage you because I don't want to say I'm being micromanaged. The requests are reasonable and I do my best to respond to them, but I'm having a hard time at some point explaining or saying to people that we hire a superintendent to run the district. Our job is to oversee the superintendent for sure, but it is not to oversee the entire district. And the more we get into it, the more we get into
I
the
don't think we're often
weeds.
talking about the entire district. We're talking about one particular subject right now.
Which
It's
is
very specific, which
highly-
is critical.
Highly
Right.
critical and sensitive.
Right, so,
And
Exactly.
my understanding is
so
that
I don't
you
think it's a
both-
big lift to share.
Right, but you're both coming from a place of distrust first, where I don't necessarily share that distrust as my first assumption.
Well, I think we have a long reputation, or
You
certainly a
do.
recent
You
reputation.
do. You distrust the school board and the school district. You've spoken out in public sessions, at deliberative sessions, that we should not be
You're in on
trusted,
it.
we shouldn't, yeah.
I don't know
Several
that I-
times.
I don't know if I said you
I'm
shouldn't be
being
trusted, but there's
You
no
have.
transparency.
You have, though.
None.
There's very
Really. You
little.
heard all of the candidates tonight say you guys are doing the best job you possibly can.
There's not transparency within the board.
And there is a lot of,
And you can roll your eyes, Tina, and that's all well
I'm
and
not-
good.
I disagree with you that
that's fine.
every communication needs to be shared with the board.
I don't think
that
every
decision
communication
has
should
to
be shared with the board either, but I think in this particular case, of this communication that we're not talking about
And
should
have you
be
had
shared.
access to it since?
Yes, a couple hours ago.
Case closed.
The horse is
Not
out of the
case
barn.
closed. I haven't seen it yet.
So-
I mean, as an
But
auditor.
it's available.
As an auditor, it's trust but validate,
Okay.
right? And again, I just, with the criticality and the sensitivity, quite frankly, of this issue, I do think it's prudent of the board to have the facts and to understand it firsthand, even when our chair has said.
I understand the facts and
But our chair has said that you haven't seen the vast majority of these communications either.
no, I haven't.
Right,
I
so-
haven't seen the vast
That's what I'm
majority of
saying.
these
That's what I'm saying.
communications.
That's what I'm
They
saying.
don't happen. It's the superintendent's job to communicate and go back and forth with legal on these particular issues. It's not my job as the chair. I have spoken to him quite frequently lately, dealing with various issues on the board, more than I want to talk to him. And I'm a lawyer. I don't want to talk to him. But, I think what I'm seeing is we are lacking the belief of good intent. We are lacking in the belief that everyone on this board is trying to move the district forward and not stall things and go behind the scenes and work with people to sabotage things. And so I think we've got a lot of interboard issues that we need to work out as a board. Have fun, Matt. Good luck. Well, come on in.
Another 6 people.
Yeah. We've got some work to do. And again, we're rolling up our sleeves and we need to do it. But and maybe we need to have some hard conversations, to do that. But, the intent is never to keep anybody in the dark unless there is a legal reason for it. And that's what I will say on the public record at this point. But I'm happy to have that conversation privately anytime. Any other school board comments?
I went to a football game this weekend on Saturday. Did you guys play?
Yeah.
Good job. My nephew Sage is on the JV team, and what I was struck most by, not only that you guys won and you were amazing on the field, but I was really struck by how well everybody on the team cheered each other on and was truly looking out for each other. At one point, a player on the other team was injured, and everybody took a knee and everybody was quiet, and it was just a very respectful. I saw excellent sportsmanship. The last part of the game when the JV team took the field, that was just amazing. You guys were cheering them on. It was their first time on the big field. I know. And I was thankful for the student athlete leaders that you guys have been, and I was really overjoyed because we've heard some not so great stories in the past about sportsmanship, but it was all in positive high gear on Saturday. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I just want to say, I think it also comes back to the thing about the staff that we have, and I give it all to our coach, the way that he has brought us up, and I'm so
I've heard some great
thankful
things.
for people like him, even the staff members we have in the school. They're
I'm
just
really excited to go to homecoming. I know my kid's not excited that I'm excited to go to homecoming, but I am going to be there, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think it's a good town event. So if any board members can make it, I think you should. The camaraderie on the sidelines is amazing. And there's a lot of people in town. You see everybody that are there. So.
You said that was the 20th?
29th is the football game, the 30th is the dance. You don't want to be there.
Nobody wants to see me dance.
But you guys, go for it.
Yeah, you guys can go. Yeah. Not appropriate. Okay, for us. Moving on, any other school board comments? Seeing none, moving on to the manifest. I think, is there 3 signatures on everything?
On all of them, yeah.
So manifest, any questions for the manifest?
Yep, I think.
Seeing none, we will move into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91-A:3, the dismissal, promotion, and compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely adversely affect. Yes, you guys can run. Adversely affect the reputation of any person other than a member of the body or agency itself.
See you guys, good job.
Unless such persons requests an open meeting. And then there's also D through L that says C. Citation. I believe for tonight we are going into non-public based off of RSA 91A:3. We're going in for A, C, and then D. Is there a motion to go into non-public?
Yeah.
Second? Questions? All in favor of going into non-public, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. Okay. That'll do it for the public portion of our meeting tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Again, thank you to the candidates that expressed interest. I really, again, appreciate that we had as many as we did. Next meeting will be on October 4th, 2023, at 5:30. So thank you very much. Have a great night.